Chapter 286. By Yi and Li Daochong, who had regained their senses, attacked the red shadow ghost at the same time. Just at this moment, a black shadow suddenly flashed over. It was Ouyang Ming. Yi? Yi? Zizidia? Yi? Zizidia? Yi? Ouyang? Yi? 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 Yilang? Yi? 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 Na? Yi? Yi? Huang? Yi? Yi? That black shadow was Ghost King. Li Daochong and Bai Yi looked at each other. They had no time to divert their attention to continue attacking the red shadow ghost. The resentful Bones held Old Gun back, making it impossible for him to escape. 6 of the 9 holes on the stone platform had already been filled up. There were still 3 holes left. Did the malicious Ghost King abandon Ouyang? Yi? 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 What a mess! What a mess! What a mess! Yi Renfei turned pale with fright. He turned around and ran without any intention to resist. The Ghost King was not someone he could deal with, but before he could run 2 steps, a strong suction force pulled him in. Yi Renfei used all his strength but couldn't run even half a step. Instead, his body was pulled back. Puff! The Ghost King's ferocious claws covered Yi Renfei's head. With a light lift, Yi Renfei was lifted off the ground and flew towards the stone platform. No, let me go. I'm willing to become Hades' most loyal partner. Yi Renfei was scared out of his wits and shouted. Li Xuemei was stunned to see Yi Renfei, who was being held by the Ghost King, say such unbearable words. She sighed in her heart. In the end, she had chosen the wrong person. The malicious Ghost King turned a deaf ear to Yi Renfei's howls and quickly threw Yi Renfei into the pit. No matter how much Yi Renfei struggled, it was useless. A black light enveloped him. Yi Renfei's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He couldn't believe that he had died just like that. Reality was cruel. In just a few seconds, Yi Renfei turned into a dried corpse. Li Daochong could sense that the deathly aura within the undying soul coffin was recovering at an astonishing rate. Once the last 2 holes were filled, it would be time for the person lying inside to come out of the coffin. The Ghost King left Yi Renfei behind and flew towards Li Xuemei. Its sharp claws pressed down on Li Xuemei. Li Xuemei looked at the Ghost King in despair. Her face was as pale as a sheet of paper. She smiled sadly. People always had to pay the price for their choices. It was just that the price he had to pay was too heavy. He had actually gambled his life. Clang! A crisp sound was heard. Just when Li Xuemei thought that she was going to die, a dark green saber appeared out of nowhere and blocked half a meter above her. It collided with the Ghost King's claws. Daochong! Li Xuemei looked at Li Daochong in shock. She didn't think that Li Daochong would come to save her. Li Daochong gave up the best opportunity to kill the red shadow malicious ghost and used all his strength to save Li Xuemei. It wasn't that he still had feelings for his first love. It was that Li Daochong wanted to stop the undying soul coffin from opening no matter what. Of course, other than that, some fragments of memories would still trigger Li Daochong. Some of the previous owner's feelings would still affect the current Li Daochong. However, Li Daochong didn't have any feelings for Li Xuemei. He only had the memories left behind by the previous owner. The Tsang ink flickered with spirit yang lightning. Even the Ghost King felt extremely uncomfortable. It was bounced back more than 10 meters. On the claws? Xing Li Nuoyao. Li Daochong threw 2 talismans to Li Xuemei and hurriedly said, "Take them, just in case." As he spoke, Li Daochong rushed towards the Ghost King. Li Xuemei stared blankly at the back that was no different from before. Her face inadvertently revealed a lonely expression. If she hadn't left him back then, what would the situation be like now? Li Xuemei looked down at the 2 talismans Li Daochong gave her. She immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. They were actually 2 level 9 talismans. Even the Ghost King wouldn't dare to take a level 9 talisman head-on. Li Xuemei raised her head again and looked at Li Daochong, who was fighting the Ghost King in the air. She softly said, "I'm sorry." Li Daochong naturally couldn't hear this apology. Even if he heard it, he wouldn't feel much. After all, the one who liked Li Xuemei wasn't him, but the previous owner. His aesthetic standards were different from the previous owners. If he had woken up earlier, Li Xuemei wouldn't have had anything to do with him. The Ghost King was the most powerful existence among the malicious ghosts. It was the final form of a malicious ghost's evolution. After that, it was the Soul Catcher Ghost, which was another level of Dark Ghost. The Soul Catcher Ghost was the transitional stage of Dark Ghost. After that, it was the Hades Aristocrat class. Li Daochong didn't dare to be careless against the Ghost King. He used all the saber techniques of the 9-split saber technique. Not only did the Ghost King block all of them, but the splitting effect was also cancelled out. It wasn't a threat at all. After Li Daochong reached the foundation establishment stage, the last and 9th saber techniques of the 9-split saber technique had appeared. However, he hadn't tried it yet. He wasn't confident and didn't dare to use it rashly. After Li Daochong comprehended the 9th level, the 9-split slash, he realized that this move required an astonishing amount of spirit chi. Even if he reached the foundation establishment stage, he would have to use up all his spirit chi. The power wasn't small. If it couldn't cause fatal damage to the enemy, he would die. Therefore, Li Daochong didn't want to use this move unless it was absolutely necessary or absolutely certain. Li Daochong didn't hold back anymore. He took out all his talismans and attacked the Ghost King. He gave Li Xuemei 2 talismans. He still had 3 level 8 talismans and 3 level 9 talismans. Li Daochong wished he had a level 10 talisman. The scene of the level 10 talisman blasting the withered life ghost into the sky was still vivid in his mind. It was really powerful. Li Daochong didn't dare to stop. After using the 9-split saber technique, 3 level 8 talismans shot out. Bang! 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 The 3 level 8 talismans bombarded the Ghost King's body like 3 super cannonballs. The power couldn't be underestimated. However, the Ghost King's half-dark body was even stronger. He took the attack head-on and was unharmed except for being pushed back. Li Daochong's heart sank. He had used all his trump cards, but they couldn't cause any fatal damage to the Ghost King. The 8th stage of the 9-split saber technique, Sky Slash. Song Ink shot out, turning into a dark green light and shooting towards the Ghost King. Bang! The Ghost King's half-dark body instantly exploded and disappeared like mist. Song Ink passed through the void and shot at the barrier, then rebounded and stabbed into the ground. Li Daochong's eyes flashed. He waved his hand and a level 9 talisman shot out. Boom! There was a violent explosion. It hit the Ghost King, who was condensing on the other side, and sent him flying. At this time, Bai Yi, who was suppressing the red ghost not far away, revealed a look of amazement. That kid was only at the early stage of the foundation establishment stage, but he could suppress the Ghost King with a thunderous attack. Bai Yi didn't think she had such ability. Li Daochong was the son of the former head of the Li family, Li Tianyang, from Blue Bay Star. He lost his mother when he was young. He was lazy and his spirit meridians had dried up, so he was a cripple. Before the age of 17, he was unknown. He relied on his father's reputation to make a name for himself, but was bullied and ridiculed by his peers. A year ago, he suddenly rose to prominence. First, he won first place in the 3-school Blue Bay Star exam. Then, he won first place in the hegemony competition. However, he was ostracized and his ranking was revoked. During the competition, he killed a disciple of the Zhao family by mistake and became enemies. Li Tianyang's enemies hit him when he was down. He was protected by Qian Changhai. After hiding for a while, he appeared at Northern Yang University on Red Sun Planet. He took first place in the direct test and was qualified for the final spot in the 100-school joint exam. He was valued by the military and was valued by Qin Zhan, the outstanding general of the Cultivation Army's Northern Army Corps. He was recruited but rejected. After that, Li Daochong disappeared for half a month. Bai Yi quickly scanned through all the information she could find on Li Daochong. As the patrolman of Red Sun Planet, how could she not know the whereabouts of the geniuses there? This Li Daochong, who had appeared out of nowhere, had been on her watch list as early as 2 months ago. It was just that Bai Yi hadn't expected to run into Li Daochong here. Based on the information, Li Daochong was naturally very strong. Bai Yi, who had participated in the direct test before, naturally knew what it meant to get first place. But even so, Bai Yi hadn't expected Li Daochong to be able to beat Ghost King to the point that he didn't even have a chance to breathe. This was 2F** King awesome. Chapter 287. After more than 10 rounds, in the eyes of outsiders, Li Daochong was indeed suppressing the Ghost King. The Ghost King's strength was comparable to a Jin Dan cultivator. It was the only one among the Ghost Kings who could really threaten a Jin Dan cultivator. To be able to suppress the Ghost King, one had to be at least at the early stage of Jin Dan. Li Daochong was only at the early stage of foundation establishment. It was amazing that he was able to suppress the Ghost King at this time. However, only Li Daochong knew his own difficulties. The reason why he had the upper hand was that he had taken out all his trump cards in one go and attacked wildly. On the surface, he was suppressing the Ghost King, but none of these attacks caused any damage to the Ghost King. Li Daochong still had 2 9th-level talismans in his hand, as well as the Spirit Sun Lightning that he had not fully used. In addition, he had not used the 9th level of the 9 cracks saber technique. Every time Li Daochong attacked, he felt like he was hitting a bronze wall. It was all bark and no bite. The Ghost King did not care at all. The netherworld flame in his eyes was burning more and more fiercely, and his anger was spreading. Li Daochong held the Tsang ink tightly and looked serious. Just now, the 9th-level talisman did not cause any damage to the Ghost King. The dark body was really powerful. If it was the dark body, the spiritual energy from the 9th-level talisman would be enough to annihilate it. Li Daochong sniffed. His cultivation was still a little low, and his cultivation method seemed to be a little lacking. For the first time, the 9 cracks saber technique did not work. At this time, Li Daochong thought of the great void swordsmanship that Chu Qianwei gave him. He had not had time to study it after he reached foundation establishment. What a pity! Li Daochong murmured to himself. Little brother, sneak attack the Red Shadow. We will work together to deal with the Ghost King. A telekinesis sound transmission came, and Bai Yi's voice sounded in his ear. Li Daochong's eyes flickered, but his expression didn't change. He looked at the Ghost King who was sent flying and raised his hands, as if he was performing some kind of dark art. Li Daochong shouted, Demon Beast Talisman, Level 10 Talisman. This shout was so loud that the Ghost King, who had just been attacked by a Level 9 Talisman, paused and looked hesitantly at Li Daochong with a ferocious face. The Ghost King still had a lingering fear in his heart. The attack just now had made him feel very uncomfortable. Even now, the death energy in his dark body had not stabilized. As he shouted, Li Daochong made a gesture of swinging his hand. Startled, the Ghost King instinctively dodged to the side. Li Daochong's lips curled into a sly smile. Swinging his hand was just an action, nothing was launched. It was just a feint. The moment the Ghost King dodged, Li Daochong turned around and shot out like a sharp arrow. Whoosh! The blade flashed past, and a giant Tsang Ink's blade shadow suddenly appeared. The injured Red Shadow malicious ghost was completely suppressed by Bai Yi. It didn't expect Li Daochong, who was fighting the Ghost King, to suddenly attack. The Red Shadow malicious ghost couldn't dodge and let out a heart-wrenching scream of fear. If such a scream suddenly rang out in the middle of the night, a timid person would most likely have a heart attack from fear. Tsang Ink's blade slashed down with earth-shattering momentum towards the Red Shadow malicious ghost. The dark body was split in half as if it was a corpse. The splitting of the dark body wasn't fatal, but it could instantly reassemble and become a whole again. The red shadow malicious ghost thought so too. But when it wanted to reassemble, sparks flashed on the split dark body, and then the dark body expanded like it was filled with air. Bang bang bang, the two halves of the dark body exploded continuously. The red shadow malicious ghost didn't have time to react before it was annihilated by the 9-split blade technique. Beep! Red shadow malicious ghost killed. Soul power gained. A notification sounded in Li Daochong's mind. The spirit chi in his body quickly rose, and his already stabilized cultivation became even thicker and more solid. The spirit base placenta was completely formed and stabilized, but it was still some distance away from the peak of the early stage of foundation establishment. Roar! When Li Daochong killed the red shadow malicious ghost, a thunderous roar came from behind him. That sound didn't belong to the human world. The Ghost King's body burned with black flames, and the netherworld fire completely erupted like the anger in its heart. A black skeleton condensed and shot towards Li Daochong like a meteor. Be careful, the Ghost King summoned a death fire puppet. Bai Yi cried out. How could Li Daochong not know the power of the death fire puppet? When Li Tianyang fought at the border, he was also injured by this move and had to recuperate for half a year to recover. Li Daochong didn't have many trump cards left, and the spirit sun lightning was the only way he could think of to restrain the death fire puppet. In an instant, Li Daochong's body flashed with electricity. Spirit sun lightning. Li Daochong forcibly condensed a blue lightning ball with a diameter of half a meter in his hand. Pop! Lightning shot out. At the same time, Bai Yi also made her move. The white phoenix silk ribbon flew out of her hand like a white snake. Phoenix silkworm soul lock. Bai Yi shouted softly. Boom! Crackle! The spirit sun lightning ball and the death fire puppet collided, and fierce sparks erupted. Lightning flashed and thunder roared, and black flames soared into the sky. The two opposing energies melted and annihilated each other. In the blink of an eye, the spirit sun lightning ball disappeared. The death fire puppet was still burning fiercely, and it split into 3 skulls made of black flames that crashed towards Li Daochong. A white ribbon flashing with golden light shot out at high speed. However, the white ribbon didn't stop the 3 death fire puppets. Instead, it passed through them and shot towards the Ghost King. Li Daochong's pupils shrank. Bai Yi wasn't helping him block, but using him as bait. Her target was the Ghost King. Li Daochong's expression darkened. Song ink instantly appeared in his hand, and 2 level 9 talismans shot out without hesitation. Li Daochong didn't want to keep any trump cards in his hand. It was already good enough that he could keep his life. Bang bang. The 2 level 9 talismans struck 2 of the death fire puppets. Although the spirit sun lightning ball had been annihilated, it had already neutralized a portion of the death fire puppet's dark flames. The 3 death fire puppets that had split apart weren't as powerful as the previous one. The level 9 talismans were enough to neutralize it. Li Daochong didn't face the other death fire puppet head-on. He dodged, but the death fire puppet instantly changed direction and locked onto Li Daochong like a homing missile. The death fire puppet's reaction speed was far faster than Yangshian's black light. Li Daochong felt a chill run down his spine. He didn't have time to dodge. All of his spirit energy gathered in his hands, and the remaining spirit sun lightning ball converged on Tsang Ink. Li Daochong swung the Tsang Ink like a baseball bat at the death fire puppet. Boom! Li Daochong felt intense pain in the web between his thumb and forefinger. He felt as if his entire body was on fire. He spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying. He slammed heavily into a wall several dozen meters away and landed on the ground. Li Daochong's powerful spatial perception came into play. He didn't crash into the ground. Even though he was injured, he still landed firmly on his feet. His 2 months of hellish training with Chu Qianyue had paid off. If he hadn't, he would have been injured even more. The death fire puppet had been defeated by Li Daochong. Bai Yi was shocked again. It wasn't that she didn't want to save Li Daochong, but the Ghost King was too difficult to deal with. If she didn't seize the opportunity to deal a heavy blow, even if she and Li Daochong worked together, they might not be a match for the Ghost King. This Ghost King wasn't an ordinary Ghost King. It was half a step into the ranks of Soul Catcher ghosts. It could even summon a death fire puppet. An ordinary Ghost King wouldn't be able to do that. Bai Yi appreciated Li Daochong very much. She didn't want this rising star to fall. She didn't want the Federation to lose a trump card against the Hades in the future. But between killing the Ghost King and saving Li Daochong, Bai Yi chose the former. A single Ghost King wasn't enough to save such a talented young man. But she couldn't kill this Ghost King. The terrifying existence inside the undying soul coffin on the stone platform might awaken. When that happened, the entire Scarlet Sun planet would be finished. Between a fourth-class cultivation planet and a rising star, Bai Yi had no choice. She could only choose the former. Bai Yi thought Li Daochong was dead for sure. But this young man overturned her judgment. He took the 3 death fire puppets head-on. Chapter 288. It was naturally better that Li Daochong was fine. Bai Yi focused on dealing with the Ghost King. Although the White Phoenix silk belt was not a mystical spirit treasure, it was not far from it. The Ghost King was bound by the White Phoenix silk belt and could not break free. Bai Yi pointed with her slender finger, and the image of a white phoenix took shape above the Ghost King's head. Phoenixes were the king of spirit birds and were a natural counter to dark ghosts. When the white phoenix took shape, the Ghost King revealed a look of shock and frantically struggled to break free from the White Phoenix silk belt. However, no matter how hard the Ghost King tried, the white belt did not budge at all. Occasionally, a golden light flashed past, constantly depleting the death aura on the Ghost King's body. A phoenix cry rang out. The image of the White Phoenix swooped down and penetrated the Ghost King's dark body. Roar! The Ghost King let out a roar of fear. The materialized dark body gradually dissipated and turned into a dark body. The death aura on the Ghost King's body continued to weaken. On the other side, Old Gun was gradually suppressing the vengeful bones. Every time the Heaven Bell hammer struck, the black flames on the vengeful bones would weaken a little. The situation gradually shifted to the side, and Li Daochong's side gained the upper hand. After Li Daochong landed, he immediately adjusted his aura and began to heal himself. The head-on clash with the dark fire puppet had caused him considerable injuries. The blood in his body churned, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Fortunately, his foundation was not injured. Although his injuries were serious, he would recover after a few days of recuperation and taking spirit medicine. However, Li Daochong's combat strength had already been reduced. If he attacked again, his injuries would worsen. Thus, he could only become a spectator and could not participate in the battle. Old Gun and Bai Yi were Jin Dan cultivators. Once they seized the initiative, they naturally would not give the vengeful bones and the Ghost King any chance. Old Gun roared, and the Heaven Bell hammer grew several times larger. With a boom, it fell from the sky and smashed the vengeful bones to smithereens. Old Gun shot out a ball of yang fire from his hand and burned the resentful bone to ashes. At the same time, Bai Yi's rites of Phoenix had already corroded the Ghost King's dark body into a ghost body. Golden flames ignited on the white ribbon. However, any flame, as long as it was of the yang attribute, was the bane of the dark ghost. The Ghost King's body writhed violently in the flames, still struggling for its life. After dealing with the vengeful bones, the panting Old Gun did not stop and immediately helped Bai Yi. The Sky Bell hammer flew towards the Ghost King. Boom! The Ghost King's body was smashed into pieces. Bai Yi added another dose of strength. The White Phoenix silk ribbon suddenly contracted like a python, and the Ghost King's ghost body instantly collapsed. Huff, huff. Bai Yi's small mouth was wide open as she gasped for breath. Killing the Ghost King had drained her a little. Even a Gene Dan cultivator would expend a great deal of energy to completely kill a dark ghost that had formed a dark body. As for the 4 people who were still alive, their tense hearts finally relaxed a little. Li Shuimei sat down on the ground, her face pale. She spat out a mouthful of blood and looked to be on the verge of collapse. Old Gun sat on a stone stool, looking very tired. There wasn't much spirit chi left in his body. Even the spirit recovery liquid was of no help. Bai barely managed to stand, her delicate body trembling slightly. She was the only one who hadn't suffered any injuries, but she was so exhausted that she didn't even have the strength to walk. Although Li Daochong was injured, he was the one in the best condition. This was due to the spirit chi transformed by the blood spirit upgrader. It was extremely pure and dense, allowing him to endure much more than the average cultivator. The 4 of them looked at each other speechlessly. They each recuperated and tried to recover some of their strength as quickly as possible. The undying soul coffin was right in front of them, but they still felt uneasy. Fellow Taoist Bai, do you have a way to remove the barrier? Old Gun sat on the stone stool and took a deep breath. He tried to maintain a steady tone as he asked. If I can recover to my peak state, I can try. But there's no way I can do it now, Bai replied, breathing heavily. How long will it take for you to fully recover? Old Gun continued to ask, his tiger-like eyes looking in the direction of the undying soul coffin. At least 2 days. As soon as Bai finished speaking, creak, a bone-chilling sound of friction suddenly rang out in the silent cave. The 4 people's hearts skipped a beat. They looked in the direction of the sound at the same time. The undying soul coffin's lid moved horizontally, revealing a gap. A terrifying death chi came out from inside. The hair on the 4 people's bodies stood on end. With another creak, the lid moved horizontally a little more. Creak, creak, creak. The lid opened faster and faster. Thump. The lid of the undying soul coffin fell from the stone stool with a heavy thud. The 4 people's hearts were in their throats, as if they were facing a great enemy. Li Daochong was almost suffocated by the terrifying death chi that was leaking out. He had never felt such a feeling before. Li Daochong had always been very calm when facing dark ghosts. Even if he encountered stronger ones, or even stronger ones, he would not feel any fear. However, in front of this aura of death, Li Daochong actually felt a sense of fear when he got on the sedan chair. The death chi was too powerful. Just how powerful was it? Li Daochong could not say for sure. This feeling had only appeared once in his memory. When he was about 10 years old, Li Tianyang took him to Kangwu Star to participate in the cultivation summit of the 4th ring starfield. The minimum requirement to participate in the summit was peak foundation establishment. There was no upper limit. Before the summit began, there would be a pre-summit press conference. Li Tianyang was not a reporter, but in order to broaden Li Daochong's horizons, he took his son with him to take a look. The spokespersons for the summit were 3 high-level members of the 4th Ring Starfields Association of Cultivators. The reporters' questions were rather sharp. Some reporters insinuated that the 4th Ring Starfields Association of Cultivators was not doing anything and that it was better to disband. These words enraged one of the spokespersons. The moment he retracted his aura and released it, more than half of the people present felt their legs go weak. Li Daochong was still a child. His spirit meridians had dried up and he had fainted on the spot. Fortunately, Li Tianyang had left in time and channeled spirit chi into Li Daochong's body to wake him up. Later, Li Daochong learned from Li Tianyang that the spokesperson was a Yuanying cultivator. The death chi emanating from the undying soul coffin was only stronger than the pressure released by the spokesperson. The difference was that one was spirit chi while the other was death chi. For human cultivators, the latter was obviously more lethal. Old Gun and Bai had just gone through a great battle. Their bodies were in the air, and Old Gun was injured. The death chi's pressure caused the 2 Gene Dan cultivators to spit out a mouthful of blood at the same time. Li Shuimei was in an even better state. Her body tilted to the side, and she remained motionless as if she were dead. The coffin lid opened and the death chi soared to the sky. Just when they thought that some terrifying existence would slowly sit up from the coffin, there was nothing else. Several minutes later, the undying soul coffin remained motionless, as if there was nothing inside. Leaving the unconscious Li Xuemei aside, the three people looked at each other in dismay, not knowing what was going on. Li Daochong was the only one who could still move. Gritting his teeth, Li Daochong took out Tsang ink and stepped onto the stone platform. He carefully approached the undying soul coffin to see what was lying inside. If the existence inside had not awakened, Li Daochong would burn it with yang fire. Just when Li Daochong was about to see the situation inside the coffin, a gap suddenly opened above the coffin. A giant hand reached out from inside and grabbed the coffin. In that instant, the soul coffin stood upright. Li Daochong saw that what lay inside was not some terrifying nether ghost, but a breathtakingly beautiful young girl. However, her face was as pale as a sheet of paper, without a trace of blood. The undying soul coffin was quickly sucked into the spatial gap. Just as the soul coffin was about to enter, Li Daochong felt a chill run down his spine. The young girl inside suddenly opened her eyes. Her demonic red pupils stared coldly at Li Daochong, and she opened her small mouth. A faint female voice sounded in Li Daochong's ears. "Human cultivator, you almost destroyed my soul. Very good, I will come looking for you." With a short sentence, the soul coffin was dragged into the spatial gap by the giant hand. Chapter 289. Li Daochong sat in the cultivation room provided by Tsing Jiao in the underground city. He slowly opened his eyes. The top-quality spiritual liquid in the spiritual liquid tank had been changed 7 times in 3 days. At this time, it was already in a dry state. Most of it had been absorbed by Li Daochong's body. It had been 3 days since the end of the matter. Li Daochong's injuries had healed and his cultivation level had improved. Tsing Jiao unconditionally provided Li Daochong with recovery and cultivation liquids. Li Daochong was already close to the peak of the early stage of foundation establishment. If he could absorb one more red shadow malicious spirit, he would be able to level up. 3 days ago, when the undying soul coffin was grabbed by the giant hand into the space gap, the 4 survivors made some adjustments and left separately. Li Xuemei's injuries were not serious. Li Daochong asked her what she planned to do in the future. Li Xuemei looked very depressed. She was very unnatural when facing Li Daochong. She only said that she planned to go back to Blue Bay Star and return to the Li family. Li Xuemei had no other place to go. After all, the Li family was her mother's home. Her parents and relatives were all in Blue Bay Star. After these few years of torment, Li Xuemei's spirit was almost gone. Her ambitions from before had long been worn out. All that was left was loneliness. Li Xuemei knew that it would be impossible for her to squeeze into the circle of cultivators in the future. Yi Renfei died together with Li Xuemei. The Yi family would definitely investigate the reason. Yi Renfei was considered one of the top geniuses among the young people of the Yi family. His death was not a small loss to the Yi family. They would lose a bloodline power inheritance. For a moment, Li Xuemei wanted to beg Li Daochong to take her in. However, when the words came to her mouth, she couldn't say it. In fact, if Li Xuemei really said such words, Li Daochong would look down on her and wouldn't take her in. If you knew this would happen, you wouldn't have done it in the first place. The path you chose, you have to finish it even if you have to kneel. Li Xuemei bought a shuttle to Blue Bay Star on the same day. She dragged her tired and lonely back to Blue Bay Star. Her life had already been decided at this moment. Bai Yi was very interested in Li Daochong. Before she left, she invited Li Daochong to join Tianhua Cultivation Company. He also promised that as long as Li Daochong agreed to join, he could guarantee that Li Daochong would become one of the shareholders of Tianhua Cultivation Company, become one of the directors, and hold the position of deputy general manager. Li Daochong refused without even thinking about it. The reason was very simple. Before he graduated, he would not join any cultivation company. Li Daochong wasn't interested in joining the military, and he didn't like entering the government either. He couldn't handle the interpersonal relationships there. What Li Daochong was most interested in was entering a good cultivation company and developing high-level talismans. This was very similar to his job as a programmer in his previous life. Being a spirit sequencer was Li Daochong's career goal, so before he graduated from university, Li Daochong didn't plan on applying for the job. Plans couldn't keep up with changes. Li Daochong still needed to understand the various cultivation companies in the Federation in many ways. Moreover, he hadn't obtained the spirit sequencer certification yet. He wasn't even an apprentice spirit sequencer. Without the certification, no one would know if you were capable or not, and you wouldn't be recognized. The Great Cultivation Era was an era where one needed to obtain a large number of cultivation certifications. Refining weapons required a weapon refiner's certification, and refining medicine required a medicine refiner's certification. It was the same for spirit sequencers. The classification of these three professions was very similar. They all started from the apprentice level, and from low to high they were: third class, second class, first class, special class, 1-star, 2-star, 3-star. 7 grades. Being able to obtain a special class certification was already quite impressive. Star levels were godlike in any profession. Li Daochong had his own plans, so naturally, he wouldn't agree to Bai Yi's invitation. Li Daochong didn't expect that Bai Yi was also the vice-chairman of Tianhua Cultivation Company's board of directors while being a patrol officer. Tianhua Cultivation Company was definitely a leading enterprise on Scarlet Sun Planet. It was much more powerful than the 4 big families. In the Great Cultivation Era, the most powerful local power had never been the family clans, but the large cultivation companies. However, the large cultivation companies wouldn't focus on a 4th-class cultivation planet. Regardless of whether it was Blue Bay Star or Scarlet Sun Planet, the large cultivation companies wouldn't pay attention to them. A 4th-class cultivation planet was equivalent to a 4th-class or 5th-class county. That bit of profit wasn't enough to attract the attention of the large cultivation companies. Therefore, on a 4th-class cultivation planet, the family clans were the local tyrants and had a more dominant role. That was because the large cultivation companies didn't participate at all. They didn't want to play with mud and **T. Tianhua Cultivation Company was considered a leading enterprise on Scarlet Sun Planet, but in the entire 4th Ring Star Zone, it was just a small shrimp. Compared to the Yunyao Federation's top 100 companies, it was far inferior. Li Daochong's target was planet Kangwu. Why would he stay at a cultivation company on planet Scarlet Sun? Bai Yi was clearly a little unhappy after being rejected. A dignified Jin Dan cultivator had been rejected by a young brat. No matter how you put it, she felt a little embarrassed. But there was nothing she could do. When it came to status, Bai Yi might not necessarily be higher than Li Daochong. After all, student Li Daochong had won first place in the direct test and obtained the direct pass card, obtaining the qualification to directly take the final test of the 100 schools joint examination. There were only 1,000 spots in the entire 4th Ring Star Zone for this. Li Daochong's final results were unknown. Perhaps it would be very difficult for him to get into the Big 4, but entering the top 100 schools in the Federation was already a foregone conclusion. With this status, Li Daochong was on equal footing with Bai Yi as a university student from a famous school. Bai Yi's status as a 4th-class cultivation planet's patrolman was only on par with a university student from a famous school. Her potential was already negligible, while the latter's potential was limitless and limitless. However, Bai Yi was unwilling to give up. She thought about how even a big shot like Qin Zhan had been unable to recruit Li Daochong, let alone her. Thus, Bai Yi quickly gave up on the idea of recruiting Li Daochong. Instead, she decided to befriend him and gave Li Daochong a spirit-nurturing pill. Li Daochong didn't refuse. It would be a waste if he didn't take it. Besides, he also needed to treat his injuries. 3 days passed. Li Daochong's injuries had healed, and his cultivation had become even more solid. There was still a week before the joint examination of 100 schools. Li Daochong had originally planned to use the remaining time to study the Great Void Sword technique and prepare to make level 10 spirit talismans. Li Daochong wanted to be fully prepared for the joint examination so that he could meet any challenges. However, after reading the Great Void Sword technique, Li Daochong still gave up on cultivating it immediately. He only needed to select Confirm on the holographic window of the hot-blooded upgrader. Then, he could immediately finish cultivating the technique. After much deliberation, Li Daochong finally gave up. When he had first cultivated the 9 cracks saber technique, he had almost been unable to bear it. The Great Void Sword technique was so powerful that Li Daochong was worried that if he couldn't bear it and couldn't recover in 7 days, he wouldn't be able to take part in the joint examination of 100 schools, or he wouldn't be able to maintain his best condition and fail the exam. That would be the end of him. To be on the safe side, Li Daochong temporarily gave up on cultivating. Then, Li Daochong threw himself into making level 10 spirit talismans, but the results were similarly unsuccessful. The materials for making level 10 spirit talismans couldn't be bought at all. Li Daochong's multi-pronged approach was also useless. Xing Jiao, Third Master Yin and Lu Xingyuan all said that they couldn't get their hands on them. Not only were these materials rare, but they were also strictly controlled by the Federation's Security Bureau and were considered strategic resources. The key materials for making level 10 and above spirit talismans were extremely rare, similar to the materials used to make hydrogen bombs on Earth. Level 10 and above spirit talismans were too powerful and were considered weapons of mass destruction. If they weren't strictly controlled, it would be a mess. Level 10 spirit talismans were still alright, but level 15 spirit talismans could destroy an entire city. It wasn't that there weren't any ways to get the materials for making level 10 spirit talismans, but they could only go through official channels. One was to become a member of a large military enterprise, another was to become a research fellow of the Federation's Cultivation Research Institute, and the last was to become a member of the Spirit Sequencer Association and obtain a special grade Spirit Sequencer certification. Li Daochong also learned from Qian Changhai that if he obtained a third-grade Spirit Sequencer certification before the joint examination of 100 schools, he would get bonus points for the examination. Li Daochong didn't want to waste the last 7 days, so he immediately headed to the Spirit Sequencer Association's office building in Scarlet Sun City. The building where the Spirit Sequencer Association was located was majestic and dazzling. It wasn't very tall, only about 30 stories high, but it was superior to the other 2 buildings that were 60 to 70 stories high. The exterior glass of the entire building was actually made of star soul crystals, which were priceless. A palm-sized star soul crystal cost 10 million Federation dollars. The entire exterior of the building was made of them. How rich must one be to be able to afford it? Star soul crystals were a higher grade than pan silver, which was the basic or used to make Dharma treasures. Its hardness and toughness were 1 grade higher than pan silver. Chapter 290. Li Daochong had never thought of participating in the Spirit Sequencer certification. After all, one's identity had to be verified. Li Daochong didn't want to show his face too much. It was fine as long as he knew how to make spirit talismans. With the memories of his previous life and the hot-blooded upgrader, Li Daochong was very confident in making spirit talismans. He wasn't worried that he would encounter too many difficulties. Thus, he had never thought of joining the Spirit Sequencer Association. Since he couldn't buy the materials he wanted, he had no choice but to take the certification test. Li Daochong entered the Spirit Sequencer building. The reception area was on the first floor, and there was an endless stream of people coming and going. Some were here to buy materials, some to buy spirit talismans, some to learn, but most of them were here for the certification test. The Spirit Sequencer certification test was held every day. As long as one had the ability, it wouldn't be a problem to get 3 stars in a day. Of course, such a situation had never happened before. The fastest record in the Federation was Spiritual Talisman Sage from 300 years ago. He became a special grade Spirit Sequencer in a day. At that time, it was shocking and became a much-told story in the Federation. Spiritual Talisman Sage's attainment in making spirit talismans was unsurpassed. The only level 25 spirit talisman in the history of the Shenghua Federation was made by Spiritual Talisman Sage. Spiritual Talisman Sage had entered the Soul Formation realm 150 years ago and was one of the core figures in the Shenghua Federation's central starfield. He was also the only 2-star Spirit Sequencer in the Shenghua Federation. Spiritual Talisman Sage's spirit talismans were very powerful. He had made many contributions at the Federation's borders and was a key target that Hades wanted to assassinate. Spiritual Talisman Sage was ranked 10th on Hades' kill list. To the Federation, a person like Spiritual Talisman Sage was a treasure that couldn't be touched by Hades. This showed how important the Spirit Sequencer profession was. Li Daochong followed the sign and went to the second floor. This was the certification office. Registration, consultation, and certification were all done on this floor. According to the sign, Li Daochong walked to an open office area. A counter separated the inside from the outside. Behind the counter sat several female staff members in the same uniform. Their Taoist robes were all heaven-grade Taoist robes. Li Daochong was also surprised when he saw this. Even now, he didn't have a decent Taoist robe. Most of Li Daochong's wealth and resources were used to make talismans. He didn't have any spare money to buy Taoist robes. However, he still needed it. If he could wear a peak heaven rank magic robe, Li Daochong's defense would rise to another level. Li Daochong glanced at the office and saw that there were quite a lot of people. There were a few beautiful attendants who were extremely busy. There were quite a lot of people who wanted to become a Spirit Sequencer. Li Daochong didn't join the queue. He didn't have any level at the moment, so he walked towards the platform. There was also a beautiful waitress standing there. Wang Jing had always been very proud of her job. It was a respectable job, and there were countless people who came to her for help every day. Many of them were descendants of large families, and there were also many talented youngsters who came to her for help. Wang Jing had also obtained the Apprentice Spirit Sequencer certification through her own efforts. Her status was very different. Spirit Sequencers were very popular in the Federation. Even Apprentice Spirit Sequencers were very popular. Apprentice Spirit Sequencers could make Level 2 talismans. Low-grade talismans could be mass-produced through spiritual brains, but their effects couldn't be compared to Level 2 talismans made by humans. Spirit Sequence runes weren't only used on talismans. They were used in almost the entire cultivation industry. Especially low-grade Spirit Sequence runes. Taoist robes, flying shuttles, and all the daily necessities produced by cultivation technology required Spirit Sequence runes. Apprentice Spirit Sequencers were high-level technicians in the production of these things. There was a huge shortage of manpower. Almost every cultivation company was hiring such talents every day. With a monthly salary, no one dared to ask for 30,000 Federation coins. This was definitely a high-paying job at the grassroots level. Wang Jing had already noticed Li Daochong when he entered the office. She would meet hundreds of such youngsters every day. Most of them came to ask about how to become a Spirit Sequencer. Many of them would brag about how amazing they were. They were very knowledgeable. Not to mention level 1 and level 2 talismans, they could even make level 5 and 6 talismans easily. In short, they were very impressive. When Wang Jing first started this job, she really believed the words of these youngsters. But after seeing them for a while, she became numb. All of them bragged without thinking. Other than being good at talking, they were nothing. If she took them to the assessment, they would be exposed. 500 people went through the certification every day, and less than 3 passed. Spirit sequence programming wasn't something that could be done casually. Not only did it require precise control of psychokinesis, but it also required a deep understanding and control of the subtle changes in spirit energy. Other than these 2 requirements, there was also creativity. Of course, this was a requirement for making high-grade talismans. If one could fulfill these 3 requirements, it wouldn't be a problem for them to become a level 2 spirit sequencer. Unfortunately, many people didn't even fulfill the first 2 requirements and came to get the certification. After all, with an apprentice spirit sequencer certification, they would be able to find a high-paying job. Many people wanted to bluff their way through, but the Spirit Sequencer Association was a strict certification department. They definitely wouldn't let those ignorant and incompetent people pass. If they wanted to get the certification, they would have to show their true abilities. Li Daochong looked like he was only 18 or 19 years old. At this age, he hadn't even started cultivating. It was simply a fool's dream if he wanted to become a spirit sequencer. Wang Jing's talent wasn't bad. She studied at Scarlet Sun University's Spirit Sequencer Institute. After graduating, she applied to work at Scarlet Sun Planet's Spirit Sequencer Association. She only received the certification for Apprentice Spirit Sequencer after 2 years. It was obvious how difficult it was to become a spirit sequencer. Thus, when Wang Jing saw Li Daochong walking towards her, her beautiful eyes immediately revealed traces of contempt. She even felt a little impatient. She wasn't willing to waste her time on these youngsters who only knew how to dream. It wasn't wrong for them to want to become a spirit sequencer, but if they didn't work hard and wanted to eat seedless dates, then that was their fault. Li Daochong didn't know what Wang Jing was thinking. He walked closer and asked, "Hello, may I ask where the Level 3 Spirit Sequencer certification is?" Level 3 Spirit Sequencer certification? Wang Jing immediately felt a phantom line behind her head. Why didn't you just directly say that you could become a Level 1 Spirit Sequencer? Wang Jing had seen many youngsters like this who wanted to show off their strength the moment they met her. They just wanted to raise their status by saying that. In reality, they didn't know anything. Li Daochong didn't think too much about it. He didn't know that there was such a thing as an apprentice spirit sequencer and thought that the lowest certification would start from level 3. That was why he asked that question. Wang Jing had just received a great swindler, so her patience had long run out. When she heard the young man in front of her asking about the third-class spirit sequencer certification, she replied coldly, "Do you have the certification for an apprentice spirit sequencer?" Li Daochong was stunned for a moment before he replied, "No." As expected, Wang Jing's expression turned even colder. "If you don't, why are you asking about level 3 spirit sequencer? You haven't even learned how to crawl and you want to run?" Li Daochong saw that this woman's tone was stiff and her expression wasn't good. He frowned slightly. "I don't understand, so I came to ask. Isn't this a place for consultations?" Wang Jing immediately said, "Young man, you should ask some constructive questions. You don't even know these common-sense questions, and you immediately ask where the Level 3 Spirit Sequencer certification is. Are you trying to make a fool of yourself?" Li Daochong's unhappy expression eased slightly. He felt that what she said made sense, and that his question was a little abrupt. Thus, he asked again, "Then where is the Apprentice Spirit Sequencer certification? Can you bring me there?" Wang Jing controlled her temper and continued to ask, Which university did you graduate from? Li Daochong replied, I haven't graduated yet. I'm currently in my second year of university. Wang Jing glared at him. You're in your second year of university? She added in her heart, Brat, where did you get your confidence from? You're only in your second year of university and you're already here for the certification? Which school? Wang Jing had been working for many years and was still strict. If he was a student from a famous school, it would be understandable. Beiyang University, Li Daochong replied truthfully. Beiyang University? Wang Jing repeated in a low voice. Then, she looked at Li Daochong as if she was looking at an idiot. Wang Jing had heard of this university before. It was the worst cultivation school on Scarlet Sun Planet. Some time ago, it was rumored that the Ministry of Education was going to remove it. You're in your second year of university? Who the hell gave you the courage to walk into the Spirit Sequencer Association's building and ask me where the third-grade Spirit Sequencer assessment is held? Are you King kidding me? Chapter 291. Is there a problem? Li Daochong asked when he saw Wang Jing looking at him with an unfriendly gaze. There's no problem, but are you sure you want to take the apprentice Spirit Sequencer certification test? Wang Jing asked coldly. I'm sure. Li Daochong nodded. The apprentice Spirit Sequencer certification test usually requires a bachelor's degree. If you don't have it, you can still take it, but you will be punished accordingly. The association did this to save manpower. Otherwise, everyone would be able to take the exam without any restrictions. The association's building would explode from the overcrowding. Therefore, those without a degree will have a chance to take the exam, but if you fail, it will be troublesome. Wang Jing spoke bluntly. Although Wang Jing didn't like these youngsters who wanted to eat seedless dates, she still had to make things clear. Otherwise, she would be neglecting her job. If not, she wouldn't have gone through so much trouble to explain and would have just brought the youngster in for the test. As for the consequences, it was none of her business. What's the punishment? Li Daochong asked casually. You are not allowed to take the Apprentice Spirit Sequencer certification test for 5 years. You will also have to pay the association 1 million Federation coins as a service fee, Wang Jing replied directly. The association's rule seemed overbearing, but it was actually because they had no other choice. In the past, there was no such rule. Everyone would take the exam, but the association didn't have that many teachers to take the exam. Every Spirit Sequencer's time was precious. If the examinees were serious, it would be fine. But most of them overestimated their abilities. They would waste their time working as a Spirit Sequencer in the association. If they had the time, they might as well do research and create spirit talismans. Therefore, the association set this rule, which calmed down the craze for the exam. Will there be no punishment if I pass the exam? Li Daochong asked again. If you pass the exam, you will be an apprentice Spirit Sequencer. Of course there will be no punishment. Wang Jing's tone was very stiff, but she was thinking in her heart. Kid, you still want to pass the exam? Stop dreaming. Oh, I know. Li Daochong paused and continued. Can I skip the Apprentice Spirit Sequencer certification test and take the third-class Spirit Sequencer certification test directly? What? The look in Wang Jing's eyes, as if she was looking at an idiot, became even more intense. She had said so much to this kid. Was this guy deaf, or was his brain flooded with water? Of course you can. But if you skip the assessment and fail, the punishment will be even more severe. You won't be able to take part in the Spirit Sequence Master Assessment for 10 years, and you will have to pay a service fee of 5 million, Wang Jing replied coldly. Please bring me to the third-grade Spirit Sequencer certification test, Li Daochong said. Have you thought it through? Wang Jing was stunned for a moment. She did not expect this kid to not hesitate at all after knowing the punishment. I'm here to take the test. There's no need to think about it, Li Daochong replied indifferently. Don't need to think? Sure. Wang Jing was infuriated for no reason. She had put in a lot of effort to get her apprentice spirit sequencer certification. She was born in a famous school and had a degree. After she started working, she humbly sought guidance. She worked during the day and read books at night. She also practiced creating spirit talismans. He had only obtained his apprentice spirit sequencer certification at the age of 25, which was considered fast among normal people. Wang Jing could not stand people who overestimated themselves. She looked at Li Daochong with disdain and said, "Follow me." Li Daochong followed Wang Jing to the third floor. This floor was where the apprentice spirit sequencer certification test was held. Anyone who wanted to become an apprentice spirit sequencer would have to take the test on this floor. Although the Spirit Sequencer Association had set the punishment, there were still many people who came to take the apprentice spirit sequencer certification test every day. However, most of them were college graduates who met the requirement. There were fewer people like Li Daochong who were studying or working in society who did not have anything. There were no less than 100 people who came to take the certification test every day. The Apprentice Spirit Sequencer Certification Test was much simpler than the official Spirit Sequencer Certification Test. It only consisted of a written test and a basic question and answer. The written test was mainly to see if the examinee's knowledge was broad enough. It was all about rote memorization. For example, the composition of the spirit brain, what the spirit base language was, what to take note of in spirit sequencer programming, etc. These were all basic knowledge that a qualified spirit sequencer needed to know. If one did not even know what a spirit brain was and how to use it, it would be impossible for them to become a spirit sequencer. Wang Jing brought Li Daochong to the waiting hall on the third floor. There were more than 10 people waiting for the next certification test. Wang Jing only told Li Daochong to wait here, and then walked to the office next door that had the words "Special Assistant" written on it with a displeased expression. Outside the office, Wang Jing's face was still cold. When she raised her hand and knocked on the door, a bright smile immediately appeared on her face. Su Xian Ro was the granddaughter of Su Chongxing, the president of the Spirit Sequencer Association on planet Scarlet Sunday. She was in her third year of university, and was the pride of Scarlet Sun University's Spirit Sequencer Institute. She had passed the third-grade Spirit Sequencer certification test at the age of 20. She was the only young person on planet Scarlet Sun who had passed the certification test before graduating from university. Last year, Su Xian Ro was able to create a level 4 spirit talisman on her own without any assistance. Her success rate was 90%. This was an extremely shocking achievement. Not many people in the fourth ring star zone could achieve this. Su Xian Ro went to school while working at the Spirit Sequencer Association. With her amazing talent, she used only a year to go from a temporary assistant to a special grade assistant. Being a Spirit Sequencer's assistant was also a respectable job. A temporary assistant could only do odd jobs. A normal assistant was slightly more advanced, but there was also a limit to how much they could do. Their main job was to help the trainee spirit sequencer move things and organize things. A third-grade assistant was one rank higher and could help a third-grade spirit sequencer. At this time, they could learn something. A second-grade assistant could help a second-grade spirit sequencer, a first-grade assistant could help a first-grade spirit sequencer, and so on. A special grade assistant could naturally help a special grade spirit sequencer. Su Xian Ro was the only special grade assistant on planet Scarlet Sunday. In fact, in the entire fourth ring star zone, there were only a few special grade assistants. Su Xian Ro was hailed as the next spiritual talisman sage. Although she was not as stunning as spiritual talisman sage, she had a meticulousness and calmness that spiritual talisman sage did not have. Su Xian Ro was also one of the few students on planet Scarlet Sun who had directly entered the 100 schools joint examination. Su Xian Ro's status was slightly higher than a normal second-grade spirit sequencer. Under normal circumstances, Su Xian Ro would not be in charge of the trainee spirit sequencer assessment. But today there was a shortage of manpower, so Su Xian Ro was called here by her grandfather before he died to take over. Wang Jing had purposely looked for Su Xian Ro. She should have brought Li Daochong to the 4th floor. The 3rd floor was the trainee assessment area, while the 4th floor was the 3rd grade assessment area. However, Wang Jing was not so stupid. If she really mindlessly brought this young man who had nothing to do to the 4th floor to participate in the 3rd grade assessment, she would definitely be scolded to death by Elder Guo. "You little girl, don't you know that my time is very precious? If you bring any random person who wants to participate in the 3rd grade assessment to me, won't I die from exhaustion?" Wang Jing could imagine how Elder Guo would scold her. But after informing her of the punishment, this young man had already requested to participate in the 3rd grade assessment. Wang Jing had no choice but to bring him along. Otherwise, it would be a dereliction of duty. Wang Jing did not dare to directly go to the 4th floor as she was afraid of being scolded. However, she really could not stand these young people. Each one of them was more pretentious than the other. She had chased away one after another. If she did not create a big commotion to intimidate this group of young people, there would be no end to it. After thinking about it, Wang Jing could only think of Su Xian Ro. She was the only person on the 3rd floor who had the qualifications to participate in the 3rd grade assessment. After interacting with her for a while, Wang Jing had a certain understanding of Su Xian Ro's temper. This proud daughter of heaven, who was both beautiful and intelligent, had an extremely strict and serious attitude towards creating spirit talismans. Su Xian Ro had an innate arrogance. Wang Jing knew that she was a woman who was destined to enter the Federation's central position. Wang Jing could not flip out at the examinees, but Su Xian Ro could. If she was really unhappy, she could slap those hotheads a few times and use low-grade spirit talismans to blast them out of the Spirit Sequencer Association building. No one would care. The treatment of geniuses was always a little special. Su Xian Ro was the most eye-catching genius on planet Crimson Sunday. For a 4th grade planet like planet Crimson Sun to produce such a genius, it was hard to find one in 1,000 years. She was the hope of planet Crimson Sun to become a 3rd grade cultivation planet. Wang Jing had purposely asked Su Xian Ro to test this batch of examinees to embarrass them. Su Xian Ro was usually a low-profile person and did not pay attention to the outside world. When creating intoxicating spirit talismans, she had the aura of an otherworldly fairy. However, Wang Jing had seen Su Xian Ro flip out before. It was as if she was a completely different person. At that time, there was a young man who thought highly of himself and acted pretentious in front of Su Xian Ro. Firstly, he wanted to win her heart, and secondly, he wanted to show off. Unfortunately, Su Xian Ro did not fall for it and took out a 4th grade spirit talisman for the young man to see if it was real or fake. The young man took a few glances and said that it was fake. Su Xian Ro did not explain and took out the 4th grade spirit talisman. The young man was sent flying out of the window with serious injuries. In the end, the matter was left unsettled. The Spirit Sequencer Association did not even pay for the medical fees, and the young man sued Su Xian Ro. In the end, the young man lost the case. The verdict was simple. He deserved it for looking for trouble. When Wang Jing knocked on the office door, Su Xian Ro was in the middle of drawing an array pattern in front of her spiritual brain. The knocking on the door interrupted Su Xian Ro's thoughts. She could not help but frown. "Didn't I say not to look for me unless it was something important?" Wang Jing, who was standing outside the door, hurriedly said, "Miss Su, I am sorry to disturb you. There is a young man who wants to skip the apprentice spirit sequencer exam and directly take the 3rd grade spirit sequencer exam." Chapter 292. A few days ago, Su Xin Ro had come up with a new set of level 5 spirit runes. However, she was still stuck in the concept and couldn't put it into practice. No matter how hard Su Xin Ro racked her brains, she couldn't figure out where the problem was. After dozens of simulations, she was still wrong. This caused her to be in a state of anxiety. Now that she heard that someone wanted to skip the exam, an inexplicable fire immediately rose in her heart. In the Federation's hundreds of years, the number of people who could take the exam could be counted on one hand. Even with her outstanding talent, she didn't dare to take the exam. Su Xin Ro wasn't just talented, she also had a grandfather who was a level 1 spirit sequencer. Even so, Su Xin Ro didn't dare to take the exam. She took it one step at a time. A few months ago, she passed the Level 2 Spirit Sequencer exam and became the youngest Level 2 Spirit Sequencer in the history of Scarlet Sun Planet. From this, it could be seen how difficult it was to get certified as a Spirit Sequencer. Now, someone wanted to take the exam. This wasn't just a matter of overestimating oneself, it was a challenge to the Spirit Sequencer Association's seriousness. Wang Jing pushed the door open and entered. Su Xin Ro's beautiful face was as cold as ice. She was obviously angry that someone wanted to take the exam. Who wants to take the exam? Su Xin Ro asked coldly. Assistant Su, he's a Year 2 student. He's not older than 19, Wang Jing replied honestly. A Year 2 student? Su Xin Ro was stunned. She then asked, what's his name? Wang Jing realized that she hadn't asked for the young man's name. Her heart skipped a beat. Assistant Su didn't seem to be in a good mood. She blamed herself for being careless. Forget it, I'm not interested in knowing the name of this kind of person. Are there any other apprentice spirit sequencer candidates that need to be tested today? Su Xin Ro's mood was extremely bad as she looked at the runes on the spirit vision screen. Yes, Assistant Su. Elder Gua is taking the Level 3 Spirit Sequencer exam and doesn't have time for now. Those people outside have been waiting for the entire morning, Wang Jing replied. Seeing that Su Xin Ro didn't ask for the young man's name, she heaved a sigh of relief. Okay, let them go to the third exam room. I'll be there in a while, Su Xin Ro rubbed her temples and said with her eyes closed. Okay, Wang Jing replied and walked out of the office. Normally, after a spirit sequencer apprentice went through a period of training and successfully created a Level 3 spirit talisman, they would be able to take the Level 3 spirit sequencer certification. Although they could register directly, to be safe, most people would choose to go through 1 or 2 tests and let the Spirit Sequencer Association decide if they could participate in the 3rd grade certification. At this moment, there were a few people sitting in the waiting room. 5 of them were here to take the 3rd grade Spirit Sequencer test. Wang Su was the most senior among the 5 of them. His talent was relatively higher, so he had the highest chance of passing the test. At the same time, he was also a fresh graduate of Scarlet Sun University's School of Spirit Sequence. Not long after he graduated, he passed the Apprentice Spirit Sequence examination. The Wang family could be considered as a prestigious family on the Scarlet Sun Star. However, the members of the Wang family did not have many achievements in cultivation. However, there were many talents in other professions. Blacksmiths, apothecaries, and spirit sequencers were all from the Wang family. Wang Su was the most talented member of the Wang family in recent generations. At the age of 23, he had a high chance of passing the 3rd grade Spirit Sequencer examination. This meant that Wang Su already had the ability to make Level 4 talismans. As Wang Su often came to the Spirit Sequencer Association to purchase materials, many people knew him. They knew that he would soon become an official Spirit Sequencer. Therefore, the waiting room attracted a lot of attention. A few candidates would try to curry favor with him from time to time. If Wang Su passed the test, he would immediately take the test. Once he passed, he would become a third-grade spirit sequencer. This was because he always had a part-time job in the Spirit Sequencer Association. In the future, he had a high chance of becoming an apprentice spirit sequence instructor in the Spirit Sequencer Association. The benefits of having a good relationship with Wang Su were self-evident. Brother Wang, with your standard, there is no need for you to take the test. Passing the third-grade certification test is just a matter of minutes. A chubby young man tried to curry favor with him. Lu Dong, look at what you're saying. Do you think Brother Wang is like you, someone who does everything in a hurry and keeps a low profile? There is no doubt about Brother Wang's strength, but Brother Wang does things steadily. Do you understand? A square-faced young man at the side said with a lecturing look. Haha, that's right, that's right. Lu Dong scratched his head and laughed. Brother Wang, since we are able to take the test together today, we can be considered classmates. If there is anything I don't understand in the future, I will ask you for advice, another candidate who looked slightly older said. Wang Su enjoyed the flattery. He smiled and did not say anything. In his heart, he was very happy. His small eyes would occasionally glance at the few female candidates sitting opposite him. They were the reason why he was in such a good mood. In his eyes, these people who were boasting about Wang Su were just a bunch of clowns. They could not be compared to him. If it were not for the presence of the female candidates, Wang Su would not have bothered with them. Of course, with the presence of the female candidates, it was a different story. This group of clowns became Wang Su's best advertisement. One or two female examinees would look at Wang Su from time to time. However, these female candidates were not worthy of Wang Su's attention. His target was Su Xianro, the woman who stood at the peak of planet Scarlet Sunday. Compared to Su Xianro, these female candidates were just wild flowers and weeds by the roadside. They could only be picked and played with occasionally. As for other things, they were naturally not worth mentioning. With Wang Su's ability, passing the third-grade certification was something that could be done in a matter of minutes. Participating in the test was not as low-key as these people said. Wang Su only wanted to see Su Xianro. He had heard that Su Xianro was the invigilator for today's test. If not for this, Wang Su would not have bothered to participate in the test. With his ability, why would he need to go through so much trouble? Half a year ago, Wang Su was already able to create a level 4 spirit talisman, which was the minimum requirement for a third-grade spirit sequencer. For his age, he could be considered to have some talent. A few people surrounded Wang Su and tried to curry favor with him. They all wanted to leave a good impression in front of this young man who was about to become a third-grade spirit sequencer. Only Li Daochong sat at the side and silently flipped through the reports on the shelf beside him. Friend, are you also here to participate in the third-grade spirit sequencer test? Lu Dong had noticed Li Daochong when he was brought in by Wang Jing. Lu Dong did not want to let go of any opportunity to make friends with an expert. The young man in front of him looked to be around 18 or 19 years old. The childishness on his clean face had not completely faded away. If he was here to take the test as an apprentice spirit sequencer, his future would also be bright. No, Li Daochong replied simply. Oh, then are you here to take the apprentice spirit sequencer test? Lu Dong continued to ask awkwardly. His expression had already cooled down from his previous enthusiasm. If he was only here to take the apprentice spirit sequencer test, it would not be that amazing. At most, he could only say that he was not bad. Lu Dong was already an apprentice spirit sequencer. As long as he focused on his cultivation, it would not be a problem for him to pass the second-grade spirit sequencer test in a few decades. No. Li Daochong still replied with 2 words. He only glanced at Lu Dong when he asked the question. After that, his gaze never left the report in his hand. Li Daochong was not in the mood to chat with these people and flatter each other. He only wanted to take the test as soon as possible so that it would be convenient for him to purchase the materials needed to create a level 10 spirit talisman. When he heard that Wang Su was not here and that was not here, Lu Dong's intention to make friends with him disappeared. His expression turned unfriendly. A fellow who had not even taken the apprentice spirit sequencer test was not even comparable to a pebble by the roadside in Lu Dong's eyes. Lu Dong was inexplicably angry. If you were a freaking awesome person, I would have accepted your attitude when talking to me. You are nothing, yet you still dare to act cool in front of me. I asked you a question and you acted like you didn't care. Why? Are you putting on a front for me to see? No? If you are not an examinee, then why are you sitting in the waiting room? Lu Dong raised his voice by an octave. The waiting room was not big to begin with. The few of them were sitting together, so the conversation between Lu Dong and Li Daochong was heard by everyone else. The few female examinees on the other side all looked at them strangely. However, they were not unhappy with Lu Dong's loud voice. Instead, they were looking at Li Daochong strangely. Doesn't the Association of Spirit Sequencers have a rule that examinees are not allowed to occupy the waiting room? A girl asked softly. At the same time, she looked at the young man opposite her with disdain. That's right. There aren't many seats here, and there are many examinees standing outside. This fellow, on the other hand, didn't care about anything and just sat down. He didn't even ask if he had the right to sit here. How uncultured, another girl added. Li Daochong did not expect the fatty sitting beside him to change his attitude faster than flipping a book. He had asked him a total of 3 questions. When he asked the first question, it could be described as flattering. After he answered the second question, his attitude was obviously cold, but it was still within the normal range. After he answered the second question, this damn fatty immediately made a 180-degree turn and directly shouted at him. How could he be so snobbish? Li Daochong slowly closed the report and turned to look at Lu Dong. The latter felt a chill down his spine and an invisible chill spread throughout his body. Lu Dong lowered his eyes and looked at Li Daochong's exposed arm. It was neither thick nor thin, but very sturdy. He seemed to be a martial artist. Do you have a problem with that? Li Daochong was too lazy to explain why he was sitting here. There was no need for him to do so. Li Daochong did not release any pressure and kept his aura. The aura he released was only at Qi refinement stage 3. But even so, the aura of a foundation establishment cultivator would still affect ordinary people. Lu Dong subconsciously shivered. He felt strange, but he did not show it on his face. There were so many people watching, and there were even a few female examinees. If he showed his fear in front of a brat who was still wet behind the ears, how could he survive in the future? He was an apprentice spirit sequencer, and his status was not something an ordinary person could compare to. He did not believe that this brat would dare to make a move on him in the Association of Spirit Sequencers. Moreover, he was the one who broke the rules. It doesn't matter whether I have a problem with that or not. What's important is that the Association of Spirit Sequencers has a rule that only examinees can enter the waiting room to rest. Outsiders are not allowed to enter. Since you are not an examinee, please leave. Lu Dong stared at Li Daochong with reason and pointed at the door. What are you arguing about? Don't you know that there is a silence rule on the examination floor? Chapter 293. Wang Jing glared at Lu Dong, who was about to scream. The latter shrunk his head and jumped in fright. He did seem to have been a little too loud. However, Lu Dong quickly recovered. He pointed at Li Daochong and hurriedly defended himself. Assistant Wang, this kid is not an examinee. He is openly occupying a seat in the waiting room. I couldn't stand it, and in a moment of desperation, I raised my voice a little. Please forgive me. Other than being a consultant, Wang Jing was also a third-grade assistant. Everyone who frequented the Spirit Sequencer Association knew who she was. Although Wang Jing didn't like Li Daochong and wanted him to get into a fight with someone, she couldn't wait for him to be ridiculed so that she could reduce his arrogance. However, this young man didn't break any rules, so Wang Jing wouldn't say anything. When Wang Jing's gaze landed on Li Daochong, the latter looked indifferent, but in Wang Jing's eyes, it was a provocation. Wang Jing was unhappy and didn't want to say anything. She just wanted to bring this bunch of people to the third examination room. However, after seeing Li Daochong's expression, she changed her mind and said with a mocking tone, "This student is not only an examinee, but also an examinee who wants to take the third-grade examination. He is a second-year student and isn't even an apprentice spirit sequencer. Yet, he wants to take the third-grade examination. Do you think he has the right to sit here?" After Wang Jing finished speaking, everyone in the waiting room looked at Li Daochong as if they were looking at an idiot. Taking the third-grade examination? No one on planet Crimson Sun had ever taken the third-grade examination. There might be some in the entire Federation, but on a low-grade cultivation planet like planet Crimson Sun, there definitely wasn't one. Taking the third-grade examination? How can there be such an arrogant person in this world? Did this kid eat the wrong medicine? He is studying in a university and doesn't even have a degree. Even if he is here to take the apprentice examination, there is a huge risk. If he doesn't pass, he will be severely punished. Isn't taking the third-grade examination just giving money to the association and destroying his own future? He wants to. What can you do about it? Hee. It's been a long time since the Spirit Sequencer Association has had such an ignorant fool. Regardless of whether I pass the test or not, there's going to be a good show to watch. There was a lot of discussion in the surroundings. Everyone looked at Li Daochong with a bit of ridicule in their eyes, as if they were waiting for a good show. Li Daochong's expression was indifferent. He turned a blind eye to the gazes cast at him from all directions. When Wang Jing heard the reactions around her, she looked very satisfied. She paused for a moment before saying, "The examinees who are participating in the third-class test today, come with me. You too." Wang Jing pointed at Li Daochong. The latter immediately stood up and walked out of the waiting room. A few examinees were led by Wang Jing to the largest waiting room on the third floor. There were over 10 tables inside. On each table, there was a spiritual computer, a recording device, various materials for making spiritual talismans, and more than 10 kinds of talisman paper. These were all required for the assessment. Apart from that, there was also a spiritual tablet testing device that looked very high-tech. It was about 1 meter tall and 2 meters wide. This device was used to test the sensitivity and precision of the examinee's spiritual sense. After entering the third testing room, the examinees consciously pushed Li Daochong aside. They gathered on one side, while Li Daochong stood on the other side. Li Daochong didn't mind. He chose a seat in the corner and sat down to rest. After succeeding in foundation establishment, Li Daochong's temperament became even more stable. Why would he bother with these ordinary people's childish behavior? If Li Daochong wanted to, with just a wave of his pressure, these people would all kneel on the ground and not be able to stand up. Wang Jing briefly explained the things to take note of during the test. Then, she sat on the podium and began to tidy up the items, waiting for Su Xianro to arrive. After a few minutes, Su Xianro arrived in a white robe. Her beautiful face carried a bit of coldness. When Wang Su saw Su Xianro, his eyes widened and he almost drooled. A few months ago, when Wang Su saw Su Xianro for the first time, he was infatuated with this heavenly goddess and thought about her day and night. In Wang Su's heart, the only person on planet Scarlet Sun that was worthy of Su Xianro was him. No one else was worthy of this goddess. Wang Su had absolute confidence in his future as a spirit sequencer. In less than 10 years, he would definitely become a first-grade spirit sequencer. He, Wang Su, and Su Xian Ro were a match made in heaven. After Su Xian Ro entered, she glanced at the examinees below the podium and said to Wang Jing, "Give them the written test papers first." Wang Jing nodded and gave the papers to the examinees. "You have 15 minutes to answer the questions. They are all very simple questions. If you don't even know these questions, then don't think about taking the third-grade spirit sequencer test. The time starts now." Su Xian Ro said casually. "That." Li Daochong suddenly opened his mouth. "If you have anything to say it after you finish the paper." Su Xian Ro frowned. She was a little dissatisfied with this young man who didn't know the rules. Didn't he know that the examination room needed to be quiet? "I'm not here to take the pretest. I want to take the third-grade test directly." Li Daochong didn't want to go through the extra procedure and said, "Assistant Wang told me to come over. For you, this is the third-grade test. If you finish the paper and get full marks, you can proceed to the next test. If you miss a mark, you will have to pay 5 million Federation coins as a service fee. Also, you will not be allowed to take any spirit sequencer certification tests for the next 10 years. Su Xian Ro said coldly. When Li Daochong heard this, he responded and immediately lowered his head to answer the paper seriously. Half of the questions on the paper were basic questions, while the other half were slightly more advanced questions. They were related to the knowledge of spirit-based programming. These questions were too easy for Li Daochong. Back in Xiansong University, Li Daochong had flipped through almost every book related to spirit-based programming in the library. Li Daochong only needed to read it once and all the content would be recorded by the blood-spirit level-up device. Just like a cultivation technique, he would instantly master it and have an eidetic memory. There was a question on the paper that Blizzard Bing had deliberately asked when he saw Li Daochong sleeping in class to make things difficult for him. What was spirit-based programming? This was a basic question. It seemed simple, but it wasn't easy to answer completely. It was easy to lose points. If there was even the slightest deviation, the invigilator could deduct points and you wouldn't be able to argue. Moreover, different books had similar but different definitions of spirit-based programming. This question was a trap question. Whether or not points would be deducted was completely in the hands of the invigilator. It was a bit like the college entrance exam. Li Daochong thought about it and decided to use his own language to answer. Spirit-based programming is a kind of controllable system that uses spiritual thoughts to control the flow of the spirit base. It outlines the basic spiritual thoughts language that the spirit brain can understand and communicates with the spirit brain, allowing the spirit brain to complete the designated task step by step according to the person's instructions. The time to answer the paper was only 15 minutes. However, to Li Daochong, the time was more than enough. He started writing without any pause. The other examinees were waiting to see this arrogant young man make a fool of himself. From time to time, they would look at Li Daochong. Wang Jing also stared at Li Daochong. In her opinion, this paper was no different from a heavenly book in the eyes of this kid. Not to mention answering the question, it was already good enough that he could understand the question. However, after answering the question, the people who looked at Li Daochong had a strange look in their eyes. The expected expression of stopping and thinking, scratching his head and scratching his head, did not appear on the young man's face. On the contrary, the spirit pen in his hand trembled as he wrote quickly. It was as if he was not answering the question, but copying from a book. Wang Su smiled disdainfully. He himself had to think for a few seconds before answering the paper, but this kid did not even need to think and his pen was flying? It was obvious that he did not use his brain to answer the questions randomly. The things he wrote were definitely nonsense. At first, Wang Jing thought that her eyes were playing tricks on her. As an invigilator, she could move around as she pleased to prevent anyone from cheating. This kid couldn't be cheating, right? Wang Jing walked behind Li Daochong and turned on the spirit vision screen. She looked at Li Daochong from all angles. She did not find any evidence of cheating. This kid's eyes never left the paper after answering the question. The only person in the examination room who did not care about the examinees was Su Xianro. After instructing Wang Jing, she sat at the front desk and prepared for the next test. She also confirmed the examinees' identities today. In Su Xianro's opinion, if the examinees could not even answer this paper, then there was no need for them to stay in the spirit sequencer industry. 10 minutes later, just as Su Xianro was about to finish her preparations, a paper was handed to her. She raised her head and saw the examinee looking at her indifferently. "I've answered it. Please mark it." Wang Su and the others who were still answering looked at each other. This kid was crazy to want to be in the limelight. How could this paper be finished so quickly? Even if it was finished, wouldn't they check it? Can you guarantee that you were not careless or careless? Li Daochong threw down the paper and returned to his seat. Su Xianro frowned. She was very disgusted with this kind of careless person. You still want to take the exam? Just based on your attitude, you've already been eliminated. Who knows how you'll answer the paper? Su Xianro did not want to mark it, but as an invigilator, she had a responsible attitude. She patiently began to mark the paper. After reading the first question, Su Xianro's eyes revealed a bit of surprise. She continued to read and saw what was spirit-based programming. Su Xianro's eyes flashed. What a meticulous answer. She had no way of deducting points. 5 minutes later, Wang Su and the others handed in their papers. Su Xianro quickly marked each person's paper. The answers were all ready-made, so marking was very fast. Brother Wang, seeing how calm you were when answering the paper, these questions must be very easy for you. You should be able to get at least 90 points. Lu Dong said with a face full of envy. He, most likely, Wang Su said with a smile. That kid, I wonder how many points he'll get. I'm really looking forward to it. Lu Dong glanced at Li Daochong. What's there to look forward to? With him, I'm afraid he won't even be able to understand the questions. He can only rely on guesses. If he can get 30 points and above, I'll recognize him as my father. Another examinee said. As soon as the examinee finished speaking, Su Xianro raised her head and looked at Li Daochong. You're Li Daochong? Li Daochong nodded. You got a full score of 100 points. You passed the first exam. The exam room suddenly became silent. Wang Jing looked at Li Daochong with a dumbfounded expression. Chapter 294. Full marks, Lu Dong murmured, his mouth twitching. Could there have been a mistake with the test paper? The examinee who wanted to acknowledge his father asked. Wang Jing's expression was blank. She never would have dreamed that this guy could get 100 marks. This test paper was one of the more difficult tests for the third-class Spirit Sequencer exam. Wang Jing had taken it before, but she had only gotten around 60 marks the first time. As the examiner, Su Xianro's shock was no less than the others. She looked at Li Daochong with a strange expression. Su Xianro couldn't remember anything about this young man. Li Daochong? This name was both unfamiliar and familiar. Su Xianro seemed to have seen this name somewhere before, but she hadn't paid much attention to it. That's right. Su Xianro remembered that half a month ago, her grandfather Su Chongxing had given her a list of names that had passed the final test of the 4-ring star zone's North Ring star zone. Su Xianro vaguely remembered seeing the name Li Daochong on the list. She hadn't looked at it carefully and had only glanced over it. However, this name was rather conspicuous, so Su Xianro had an impression of it. There were hundreds of billions of people in the Federation, and there were many people with the same name. However, Su Xianro now had a feeling that this young man called Li Daochong might be the one on the list. Su Xianro reported everyone's scores one by one. Wang Su had gotten 87 marks, which was quite a high score. As long as one could get more than 80 marks on this test paper, they would pass the test. Su Xin Ro had asked Li Daochong to get full marks because she was unhappy and wanted to make things difficult for him. She hadn't expected this guy to really get full marks. Other than Wang Su, no one else had gotten more than 80 marks. Lu Dong had barely passed, and half of the others had failed. After all the scores were reported, Li Daochong's full marks were even more stunning. Lu Dong regretted his attitude toward this young man in the waiting room. Now, he felt that this kid wasn't just showing off, but actually had some skill. One test paper eliminated 5 people, leaving only Wang Su and Li Daochong qualified to take the next test. Wang Su was taken away by Wang Jing. What he needed to do was a routine test. Li Daochong would be personally tested by Su Xin Ro. After marking the papers, Su Xin Ro looked at Li Daochong in a new light. She was looking forward to his performance. The others left examination room number 3 dejectedly. They had failed the simplest written test, so there was no need to continue with the following test. Only Su Xin Ro and Li Daochong were left in the examination room. Li Daochong sat in the audience while Su Xin Ro sat on the stage. The latter was focused on the laptop in front of her. Her slender fingers tapped on the keyboard without saying a word. After waiting for more than 10 minutes, Li Daochong saw that Su Xin Ro still had no reaction. He felt strange and asked, "Excuse me, when will the second assessment begin?" Su Xin Ro didn't immediately reply. She stared at the spirit vision screen with a serious expression. After a while, her expression relaxed and she let out a sigh of relief. "I'm sorry for making you wait. The second test will now begin. Come and take a look at this spirit path pattern and see if there is anything that needs to be improved." Su Xin Ro stood up and walked in front of Li Daochong. She handed the spiritual brain to him. Li Daochong took the spiritual brain and looked at it. The corner of his mouth slightly raised. Wasn't this the pattern of a 3rd-rank fire talisman? For Li Daochong, who could make 9th-rank talismans, it was easy for him to see the flaws. Li Daochong didn't say a word. He moved his spirit force and a trace of spiritual energy gathered at his fingertips. He quickly tapped on the keyboard a few times. Okay. It took less than half a minute. Su Xin Ro returned to the stage and sat down. She estimated that Li Daochong would take at least half an hour to answer the questions. She didn't expect it to be so fast. Su Xin Ro looked at Li Daochong in disbelief. Her eyes were filled with suspicion. Her pair of plump buttocks touched the chair, and she immediately stood up and walked back. She picked up the spiritual brain and looked at it. In just a few seconds, Su Xin Ro's eyes were filled with shock. She had purposely tampered with this spiritual path pattern. However, the mistakes were hidden very well. Even a 3rd-rank spirit sequence master wouldn't be able to see it. Even if the mistakes were found, it wouldn't be easy to fix it. Without a solid foundation in spiritual base programming and spiritual sense control, it would be impossible to fix it. Su Xin Ro's last-minute question was also to make things difficult for Li Daochong. What really shocked Su Xin Ro wasn't that Li Daochong had quickly found the mistakes and fixed them. He had actually changed the original parts that were correct. This was another level of performance. The inherent spiritual path pattern was the best pattern that generations of spirit sequence masters had tested and improved over and over again. It could be said that the classical pattern was the truth, and there was no mistake. Only a star-rank spirit sequence master would study the problems with the classical pattern. Even Su Xin Ro's grandfather, Su Chongxing, who was a veteran special-grade spirit sequence master, couldn't find the flaws in the classical pattern. Li Daochong, on the other hand, easily modified the classic lines. Su Xin Ro looked at the modified spiritual path pattern on the screen, and her breathing became rapid. It was as if she was admiring an oil painting by a master. Su Xin Ro's eyes lit up. After looking at it, she impatiently took the spiritual brain and connected it to a recording device on the podium. She put down a talisman paper and quickly operated the spiritual brain to create the talisman. The invention of the spiritual brain greatly reduced the time needed to create a talisman. Otherwise, even a very powerful talisman master would need a day to create a third-rank talisman using a talisman pen. Now, it only needed a few dozen seconds. Soon, the third-rank talisman modified by Li Daochong was created. The spiritual path pattern on it lit up. The surrounding spiritual energy quickly gathered into the talisman. Su Xian Ro looked at the third-rank talisman in her hand like it was a work of art. This third-rank fire talisman's power was close to a fourth-rank fire talisman. Su Xian Ro had already forgotten her identity as an invigilator. As for the exam, she threw it to the back of her mind. She quickly looked at the spiritual path pattern she had studied earlier. This was a protective talisman she had created? A talisman. If it could be formed, it could greatly increase the defense against dark ghost attacks. If the frontline soldiers could have a few, it could greatly reduce the death rate. Mr. Li, can you help me see what's wrong with this talisman? I've already studied it for more than a month, but I still can't figure it out. The pattern is drawn, but it has no power when created. Can't even reach a third of what I imagined. Su Xian Ro's words were very smooth and seamless. Li Daochong looked at it and saw the reason. This was a fifth-rank protective talisman that could activate 3 layers of protection. The outermost layer was an earth shield that protected against physical attack. The middle layer was a spiritual energy shield that could block dark ghost attack. The innermost layer activated the metal element and formed a metal armor on the person protecting it. The protective effect could last for more than 10 minutes. The entire spiritual path pattern was very ingenious. It could be used to allow the spirit brain to understand the programmer's intentions and display the basic pattern. Just this alone was not an easy feat. There's no problem with the spirit path's runes. The reason why it's wrong should be because the strength of the spiritual sense isn't right. In other words, there was a mistake during the programming of the spirit base, causing the runes to be uneven. Li Daochong began to type on the spirit brain's keyboard. The spiritual energy at his fingertips was controlled by his mental force to maintain an extremely precise stability as it was quickly transmitted into the spirit brain. The pattern was still the same. Just from the appearance, there was no change. Su Xian Ro's beautiful eyes stared unblinkingly at Li Daochong's actions, afraid of missing a single detail. Okay, let's try it now. Li Daochong quickly finished. Su Xian Ro immediately began. Soon, the protective talisman created by Su Xian Ro was completed. The talisman flickered with a faint light. It was completely different from before. Su Xian Ro immediately placed the protective talisman into the spiritual network to simulate its power. After testing it, the defensive effect was even better than before. There was actually a 4th layer of protection, lightning net. The protective talisman's level was forcefully raised to 6th rank. When Su Xian Ro logged out of the spiritual network, she looked at Li Daochong with shock, but more admiration and worship. Correct, worship. Su Xian Ro knew that this young man's attainments in making talismans were far above her own. He was even above her grandfather, Su Chongxing. Chapter 295. Li Daochong's expression was serious when he asked the question. His eyes were clear and there was not a trace of pretentiousness. He even looked a bit nervous. Li Daochong's talent in talisman crafting was unquestionable. He had the hot-blooded leveling device, sharp spiritual sense control, and a solid foundation as a programmer from his previous life. This was something that no one else could compare to. But even so, Li Daochong was still a bit nervous when faced with tests. There was nothing he could do about it. There were too many tests in his previous life. After graduating from kindergarten, he had to face all kinds of tests. At this moment, Li Daocheng's emotions were natural. But in Su Xin Ro's eyes, it was a completely different feeling. After the written test and 2 modifications of the Spirit Path's runes, Su Xin Ro, who had walked step by step, knew better than anyone how talented this young man was in talisman crafting. Su Xin Ro believed that this young man called Li Daocheng could definitely pass the first-rank Spirit Sequencer exam, let alone third-rank Spirit Sequencer. Su Xin Ro couldn't help but feel that he was very cute when she saw him being so nervous despite being so strong. After Li Daocheng asked the question, he looked seriously at Su Xin Ro. The latter also looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. The 2 youths looked at each other for a few seconds. Su Xin Ro did not know why, but she could not help but laugh. Li Daocheng was confused. "What are you laughing at?" Su Xin Ro knew that she had lost her composure, but she could not control her laughter. She covered her mouth and laughed for a while, then said apologetically, "Nothing, I just wanted to laugh." Sorry, you have passed the 3rd exam." Li Daocheng nodded in surprise and said, "Then the 4th exam." Without waiting for Li Daocheng to finish, Su Xin Ro said, "There is no 4th exam. In a bit, come with me to get your certificate. From now on, you are a 3rd-rank Spirit Sequencer." Su Xin Ro knew that Li Daocheng's strength was above a 3rd-rank Spirit Sequencer. Unfortunately, as a 2nd-rank Spirit Sequencer, she could only be certified as a 3rd-rank Spirit Sequencer. Su Xin Ro did not have the authority to certify higher rank. Li Daocheng was reading the briefing in the waiting room. There was an introduction to the procedure of the Level 3 assessment. It said that there were 4 assessments. He didn't expect that this beautiful examiner would actually make things easier for him. However, since he didn't need to take the test, Li Daocheng naturally wouldn't stand on ceremony. It was best if he could save time. Wang Jing brought Wang Su to another test room and returned. She did not believe that this guy called Li Daocheng could pass the test. Although it wasn't easy to get full marks in the written exam, it did happen occasionally during the examination. Many bookworm examinees thought that the written exam was their world, and they could do whatever they wanted. When it came to creating talismans or modifying talisman patterns, these bookworms would be separated. It was useless for a spirit sequence master to be knowledgeable. Being able to create spirit talismans was what mattered the most. Wang Jing wasn't the only one. Lu Dong and the other examinees didn't believe it either. In all these years, no one on the Scarlet Sun planet had taken the exam before. This guy who came out of nowhere could pass the exam? They didn't believe it. Therefore, they were all waiting at the door, ready to watch a good show. If you didn't have a name, no one would believe that you could pass. While they looked down on you, they were also looking forward to seeing you make a fool of yourself. At this moment, Lu Dong and the rest had such thoughts. Wang Jing had just returned and waited for a while when the door to test room number 3 opened. Li Daocheng was the first to walk out. When Wang Jing, Lu Dong, and the rest saw that he came out so quickly, they concluded that he must have failed the test. Their faces instantly revealed looks of disdain, as though they were saying, "Kid, who asked you to pretend? Why, you didn't pass. You thought too much about taking the exam." The moment Li Daocheng came out, he saw that everyone was looking at him with mocking expressions. He felt that it was funny, but he didn't say anything and walked straight to the spirit floating staircase. Lu Dong couldn't help but say sarcastically, "You want to take the exam when you haven't even grown all your hair? Go home and grow all your hair before you come back." Another examinee added, TSK, this is a big loss. 5 million is gone. I won't be able to enter the Association of Spirit Sequencers for the next 10 years. The examinee who wanted to acknowledge Li Daocheng as his father during the written test was even better. He patted Li Daocheng's shoulder and said, "Kid, don't be too arrogant in the future. It's better to be more down to earth." Li Daocheng turned his face and calmly looked at the guy who had patted his shoulder. His eyes were unperturbed as he said calmly, Don't let your hand go anywhere. It's very dangerous. The examinee was stunned, not knowing what he meant. Li Daochong sincerely reminded him that this was the association of spirit sequencers. No one would fight here. If they were outside and everyone wasn't familiar with each other, you would easily be beaten up if you patted someone's shoulder like that. If they were at the border battlefield, everyone would be nervous. If you patted someone like that, they would turn around and chop your hand off. No matter what it meant, it didn't feel good. The examinee was instantly enraged and said angrily, "Kid, how can you say that? You came to the Association of Spirit Sequencers. Don't you know the rules? I'm an apprentice spirit sequencer. When you see me, you have to call me senior. Don't you know such basic manners? You didn't pass the exam and you want to vent your anger on me?" Su Xianro, who came out later, saw this scene and frowned. She said coldly, "Take your hand away. How can you speak to Mr. Li like that? Mr. Li has already passed the 3rd grade spirit sequencer exam. You should call him senior." "What?" Several people in the corridor suddenly opened their mouths wide and exclaimed in unison. They were dumbfounded. "Passed the exam? 3rd grade spirit sequencer?" Su Xianro respectfully walked in front of Li Daochong. The coldness on her face disappeared instantly. She said in a pleasant voice, "Mr. Li, please follow me. You can get your certificate on the 6th floor." Li Daochong nodded. The examinee who placed his hand on Li Daochong's shoulder couldn't help but tremble. Even after Li Daochong left, his hand was still in the air, patting his shoulder. Wang Jing covered her mouth and looked at Li Daochong's back. Her heart was in turmoil. She had seen many arrogant youngsters in the Association of Spirit Sequencers. When a true genius appeared, she was extremely uncomfortable. Thinking back to her previous attitude, she suddenly realized that she was no different from those snobbish people. Su Chongxing looked at the protection talisman that his granddaughter gave him. His old eyes shone with excitement. Qian Chonghai, who was standing at the side, was also shocked. The runes on the protection talisman were natural and precisely followed the spirit energy laws. Once activated, Qian Chonghai had no doubt that the protection talisman would have a strong protective effect. "Brother Su, I didn't expect your granddaughter's talisman crafting skills to have reached such a level. You have a successor. The student has surpassed the master. You didn't have this ability when you were Xianro's age." Qian Chonghai sighed. "Brother Qian, if you want to praise, don't do it in front of me. Young people are easily arrogant. Don't be envious of me. Didn't you also take in a good student? Binghe told me that it was thanks to you and that kid that his Beiyang University could be preserved. I heard from Binghe that the kid is extremely talented. Not only did he get first place in the entrance exam, but he also caught the eye of Qin Zhan and wanted to recruit him. That kid actually didn't agree. I think it's most likely you who led him astray. Didn't you also reject the recruitment of the Shenghua Federation's central government?" Su Chongxing seemed to be comforting him. But when he spoke, he couldn't hide the joy in his eyes. He was quite satisfied with his granddaughter's work. "It's all in the past. Why are you still talking about him? That kid doesn't look like me at all. It would be great if we were really alike." Qian Chonghai shook his head. "Brother Qian, didn't you come looking for me today because of him? It's a pity that this old man really can't help you. If you want to become a spirit sequencer, there's only one path to take. If you pass, it'll be easy. If you don't pass, there's nothing I can do. If you want me to go easy on him, I, Su Chongxing, can't do it. Brother Su, how could I, Qian Chonghai, ask you to go easy on him? You misunderstood my meaning. I want you to take him as your disciple and use him as a springboard to become an apprentice spirit sequencer." Qian Chonghai explained. Today, Qian Chonghai specially came to look for Su Chongxing to pave the way for Li Daochong. For the past 2 days, Li Daochong had asked him many questions about spirit sequencers. Qian Chonghai naturally told him everything he knew and told Li Daochong everything he knew. Seeing that Li Daochong seemed to be very enthusiastic about this matter, Qian Chonghai took note of it and personally visited Su Chongxing to discuss this matter. Qian Chonghai didn't want to open the back door. He wanted Su Chongxing to take Li Daochong as his disciple. As the saying goes, a great teacher produces a great disciple. In the spirit sequencer circle, Su Chongxing stood at the top of the pyramid on planet Scarlet Sunday. He was rather famous even in the four-ring starfield. If Li Daochong became his disciple, passing the apprentice spirit sequencer exam would be a piece of cake with just a little guidance. I don't have any plans to take in a disciple. Let's talk about this later. Su Chongxing tactfully rejected and turned to Su Shinro. Rower, your talisman crafting skills have improved greatly. I think you can prepare for the first-grade spirit sequencer exam. Su Chongxing couldn't hide his excitement. The hand holding the protective talisman trembled slightly. How could he not be excited when he saw his granddaughter crafting such a powerful talisman? Grandfather, I didn't make this, Su Shinro said honestly. You didn't make it? How can that be? Rower, don't make fun of grandfather. Haven't you been studying this protective talisman recently? The runes on it are exactly the same as the one you showed me before. Su Chongxing had a face of disbelief. Qian Chonghai also had a strange expression. It wasn't made by Su Shinro. From what he knew, among the younger generation of spirit sequencers on planet Scarlet Sun, Su Shinro was definitely the pride of the heavens. No one could compare to her. Grandfather, let's not talk about this first. The person who helped me modify this talisman is just outside. He has already passed the third-grade spirit sequencer exam. I brought him here to receive his third-grade spirit sequencer certification. Su Shinro cut to the chase. Is that so? Could it be that rising star from the Wang family? That can't be right. Although that kid is a little smart, he is still far from being a first-grade spirit sequencer. He shouldn't have the ability to help you modify this talisman. Su Chongxing was puzzled. Grandfather, what are you thinking? That kid from the Wang family hasn't even mastered third-grade talismans yet. How could it be him? It's a young stranger. Su Shinro rolled her eyes. Chapter 296. Su Chongxing was curious, but Qian Chonghai was even more curious. He had been on planet Scarlet Sun for a period of time and had some understanding of the young people who were ranked at the top of each profession. However, he had no impression of this young man that Su Shinro had mentioned. Although spirit sequencer was a popular profession, it was the hardest to become one of the best among the three major professions. The two elders stared at the door without blinking. Su Shinro went out and returned quickly. She brought in a tall and thin young man with a clean face. The moment Li Daochong stepped into the room, Qian Chonghai was stunned. Su Chongxing's face was full of surprise. This young man looked very unfamiliar. He had never seen him before. Su Shinro excitedly introduced, "Grandpa, this is the person who helped me modify the protection talisman. His name is Li Daochong." Li Daochong? Su Chongxing's face was full of doubt. He turned to Qian Chonghai and asked, "Brother Qian, isn't your disciple also called?" As Su Chongxing was speaking, Qian Chonghai left his seat and walked in front of Li Daochong. He sized up Li Daochong. "Brat, when did you learn how to create talismans?" Facing Qian Chonghai's surprised question, Li Daochong scratched his head. He did not expect to meet old man Qian here. Li Daochong grinned and changed the topic. "Grandpa Qian, why are you here?" Qian Chonghai's face was stiff. "Brat, don't worry about why I'm here. You hid very well. This old man knew nothing about you being able to create talismans. If I didn't meet you here today, when did you plan to tell me this secret?" When Su Chongxing heard Qian Chonghai's words, how could he not understand that this young man in front of him was the disciple that Qian Chonghai was proud of? However, Qian Changhai didn't seem to know that his disciple could make talismans. Su Changxing also felt a little strange. Seeing that Qian Changhai was a little angry, Li Daochong leaned close to his ear and whispered, "Grandpa Qian, I heard that there's a newcomer in the flower pavilion of the Shadow Serene Lane in the underground city. I have a photo. Do you want to take a look?" Qian Changhai's serious expression disappeared in an instant after Li Daochong's words. His turbid old eyes lit up, and his pupils turned into the shape of a heart. He rubbed his hands together in a wretched manner. "Hurry up and take it out for this old man to admire." Li Daochong didn't have any photos. He just wanted to divert Qian Changhai's attention. This old man was more important than looking at beautiful women. However, Li Daochong had already sent a message to Xingjiao. As the manager of the Shadow Serene Lane, it was easy for him to get a few photos of beautiful women. The Flower Pavilion was actually the public relations department of the Shadow Serene Lane for receiving VIPs. The staff were all beautiful women. The Flower Pavilion was a little similar to the high-class brothels in the cultivation era in the antiquity times. The women in the Flower Pavilion sold their bodies but not their smiles. Of course, it was common for them to be taken advantage of by big clients. Everyone tacitly agreed that these beautiful women were willing to suffer a little loss, as long as the price was high enough. Qian Changhai was a frequent customer there. He had been like this when he was in the Blue Bay Star. Li Daochong knew this teacher very well. Xingjiao reacted quickly. After reading Li Daochong's message, she immediately sent dozens of photos of beautiful women. Xingjiao, who was in the Shadow Serene Lane, felt a little strange. Why did Li Daochong, who had never been interested in women, suddenly ask for sexy photos? After sending the photos, Xingjiao pursed her lips. Could it be that Mr. Li was starting to be interested in women? If so, should she change her dressing when she saw Mr. Li in the future? For example, if she wore more revealing clothes, would that win Mr. Li's favor? Li Daochong naturally didn't know what Xingjiao was thinking at the moment. He immediately sent the photos to Qian Changhai. The wristwatch on the old man's wrist vibrated, and he impatiently probed it with his telekinesis. The first photo was of a bareback. Qian Changhai almost had a nosebleed. He quickly withdrew his telekinesis and glanced at Li Daochong with satisfaction. Qian Changhai chuckled and said in a low voice, "Boy, you are smart. I won't pursue the matter of you hiding it from me this time. If there is a next time—" He stopped in the middle of his words. Li Daochong looked at Qian Changhai helplessly. "What will happen?" Qian Changhai's eyes flashed. His face became gloomy and ferocious. "If there is a next time, the number of photos will be doubled. Otherwise, I won't spare you." Big beads of sweat rolled down the back of Li Daochong's head. He smiled bitterly. "Old brother Qian, what are you and your master whispering about? Why don't you tell this old man?" Su Changxing said with some dissatisfaction when he saw the old man and the young man whispering to each other and leaving him aside. "Brother Su, I have something to do. I will leave first. Bye." Qian Changhai had a lot of sexy photos and was eager to enjoy them. He didn't care about Su Changxing's feelings. After saying that, he turned around and left quickly. Su Changxing's forehead was blue and blue veins stood out. This old man's temperament was still the same as before. Su Shinro saw that the atmosphere was a little awkward and hurriedly said, "Grandpa, please verify Li Daochong's identity." Su Changxing then retracted his gaze from the door and turned to look at Li Daochong. He was somewhat unhappy in his heart. Don't worry. Now the association has a new rule. Before the qualification is verified, there is an additional test. I will invigilate it personally. New rule. Why don't I know about it? Su Shinro was confused and stared at Su Changxing, who looked unkind. Of course you don't know. Only the presidents of the associations know it. You are not the president. How can you know it? Su Changxing said casually. In fact, there was no new rule. Su Chongxing was just unhappy because of Qian Chonghai's reckless behavior and deliberately made things difficult for Li Daochong. Su Chongxing naturally knew his granddaughter's level. Since Su Chongxing could pass his certification, it couldn't be fake. But now Su Chongxing just didn't want to certify Li Daochong. If Li Daochong couldn't finish the test he set, he wouldn't certify him. Su Chongxing wanted to let Qian Chonghai beg him again. At that time, Su Chongxing would scold him and then certify him. When they joined the cultivation army together, Su Chongxing suffered a lot because of Qian Chonghai. Su Xinro couldn't do anything about it. She looked at Li Daochong apologetically. Li Daochong smiled bitterly in his heart. He faintly guessed Su Chongxing's intention. Now he finally understood why Chu Qianyue, as a student of Qian Chonghai, had such a bad attitude to this old man. Did you modify this? Su Chongxing picked up the amulet and asked Li Daochong. Yes, Li Daochong replied. The modification is good. But my granddaughter did a lot of work in the early stage. The whole amulet is almost complete. You just did something ready-made. Anyone can find fault. Sometimes it's even due to luck. Therefore, there will be a certain deviation in this kind of test. The test I gave you is very simple. You just have to make a level 5 amulet on the spot. You only have one chance, Su Chongxing said indifferently. Su Xinro's expression changed. Level 5 amulet? Succeed in one try? Wasn't this deliberately making things difficult? Many veteran third-class spiritual sequencers didn't have a 100% chance. Su Xinro herself had a 10% chance of making a level 5 amulet. Just as she was about to raise an objection, Li Daochong said, "Can the equipment here be used?" "Of course, you can use it as you wish." Su Chongxing nodded, but there was a bit of pride in his eyes. It was as if he was saying, "Young man, the foundation of making amulets is the person, not the equipment. Don't think that my advanced equipment can increase your success rate. You can use it as you wish." Li Daochong nodded and walked to the spiritual computer. He immediately started the first step of the procedure. Chapter 297. Li Daochong couldn't be more familiar with talisman crafting procedures. Spiritual base programming was a piece of cake for him. Level 5 talisman rune patterns were a piece of cake for him now. Tap, tap, tap. Only the sound of Li Daochong tapping on the keyboard could be heard in the room. The rhythm was bright and the frequency was highly coordinated. A pair of slender hands danced on the keyboard. Faint spirit energy continuously entered the spiritual brain from his fingertip. At first, Su Chongxing looked at Li Daochong with the attitude of watching a good show, waiting for him to make a fool of himself. But as he watched, Su Chongxing's gaze gradually became astonished. This. As the saying goes, the layman watches the show, while the expert watches the skill. As a special grade spirit sequencer, how could Su Chongxing not see that Li Daochong was pretending at this moment? In just a few minutes, a rune pattern of a level 5 talisman had been completed on the spiritual brain. Su Chongxing's astonished expression turned into shock. Even he couldn't reach this speed. No matter what, it would take more than 10 minutes. Su Chongxing was shocked, and Su Xinro was even more incredulous. A pair of beautiful eyes stared at Li Daochong's hands that were tapping on the spiritual brain keyboard. Su Xinro's mouth was slightly open, but she didn't realize it. An ignorant love tooth was quietly sprouting in her heart. Su Xinro had seen countless young talents in her life, but she had never seen anyone who could surpass her in terms of spirit sequencing. Li Daochong was the first. Li Daochong turned a blind eye to the gazes of the grandmother and granddaughter. He wasn't pretending to be cool, but he was completely immersed in making talismans. Li Daochong didn't know what was happening around him at all. His mind was completely focused on making talismans. Through the spiritual base programming, he communicated with the spiritual brain so that the spiritual brain could understand the intentions of the cultivator. Then, he would weave a spirit sequence and transform it into patterns or words that humans could understand. These patterns and words contained the principles of spirit energy. The slightest deviation would cause all the previous efforts to be wasted. Li Daochong took out a piece of talisman paper that he had brought with him, placed it in the recording device, and pressed the confirm button on the keyboard. Conch? Champagne? Grub times charcoal? Muscle spiritual ink was another key material for making talismans. It was made from materials that Li Daochong often needed to buy. Different levels of talismans required different types of spirit ink. If the requirements were not met, the talisman would fail. The higher the grade of the talisman, the higher the grade of the materials needed and the rarer they were. Purchasing high-grade rare materials was Li Daochong's true motive for becoming a spirit sequencer. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come to the Spirit Sequencer Association. The printing process of the spiritual ink was very fast. In less than 10 seconds, a level 5 spiritual talisman slowly flowed out from the other side. The talisman emitted a faint halo, and the surrounding spiritual energy was naturally attracted to it. Li Daochong picked up the talisman and said, "Senior, this is a 5th grade fire talisman. Please take a look." Su Chongxing recovered from the shock when he heard the voice. He took the talisman and examined it for a moment. Then his eyes widened and his hands trembled. This kid casually made a 5th grade talisman that was infinitely close to a 6th grade talisman. It was an enhanced 5th grade talisman, and its power was much greater than a normal 5th grade talisman. The runes on it were not the classic runes that were commonly used, but self-created runes. Su Chongxing had already forgotten the unhappiness in his heart. Nothing could make him more excited than discovering a genius in the Spirit Sequencer Association. It was an indisputable fact that Li Daochong's standard was far above his granddaughter's. Su Chongxing's gaze towards Li Daochong changed. There was a bit more respect in it. This was a genius in the Spirit Sequencer Association who would definitely surpass him in the future. "Grandpa, can we verify Li Daochong's identity now?" Su Xinruo didn't forget to remind Su Chongxing. "Of course, but I still have a question that I hope little Li can answer truthfully." Su Chongxing couldn't hide his excitement. "Senior, please ask," Li Daochong said politely. "What's the upper limit of your talisman creation?" Su Chongxing asked. Li Daochong was able to create an enhanced 5th grade talisman in one go. How could his standard be limited to 5th grade? If the materials are complete, I should be able to create a 10th grade talisman. Li Daochong paused for a moment before replying truthfully. "Hiss!" Su Xinruo and Su Chongxing both sucked in a breath of cold air. Being able to create a 10th grade talisman was the standard of a 1st grade spirit sequencer. A 3rd grade spirit sequencer's upper limit was 6th grade, a 2nd grade spirit sequencer's upper limit was 9th grade, and a 1st grade spirit sequencer's upper limit was 12th grade. Being able to create a 10th grade talisman was the entry level of a 1st grade spirit sequencer. How old was he? Su Xinruo couldn't hide the shock on her face. He was at least 2 or 3 years younger than her. "Ha ha ha, good. Our Shenghua Federation has another pillar of talent. Little Li, I'll make an exception today and use my authority to directly certify you as a 2nd grade spirit sequencer." Su Chongxing suddenly laughed out loud. Li Daochong's expression didn't change much. He didn't care about the certification level. He only needed to have an official identity so that it would be easier for him to find out how to obtain high-grade materials. That was all. Su Xinruo looked at Su Chongxing, puzzled. Her grandfather had always been cautious. Even if Li Daochong showed amazing talent, he wouldn't use his precious authority. This was the only time he had the authority to recommend someone. Su Chongxing immediately opened the spiritual computer in front of him. After a quick operation, a jade card popped out from the side. "Little Li, this is your 2nd grade spirit sequencer's certification card. From now on, you are a second-grade spirit sequencer of our Shenghua Federation. Furthermore, I've also made you a member of the Spirit Sequencer Association. Normally, one can't become a member of the association without outstanding contributions. However, with your talent, it's only a matter of time before you make contributions in the future. I have high hopes for you. Su Changxing patted Li Daochong's shoulder. Li Daochong took the jade card and put it into his storage bag. He smiled and said, "Thank you, senior. I suddenly feel a lot of pressure." "How can a young man like you not feel a little pressure? Now that the Hades is constantly making moves, a big war could break out at any time. The Federation needs young people like you and Shinro. You are everyone's hope." Su Changxing's excited expression turned serious. Li Daochong nodded and said, "One day, the Hades will be chased out of the human realm by us." Hearing Li Daochong's words, Su Changxing looked at him with gratification and said, "Little Li, I'm very happy to hear you say that. Yes, one day the Hades will be chased out of the human realm by us. We'll make those damn dark ghosts go back home and return peace to the human realm." 2 hours later, Li Daochong returned to the cultivation room in the Shadow Serene Lane. He politely rejected Su Changxing's job offer. Li Daochong's main purpose of making talismans was to give himself a few more life-saving trump cards when hunting dark ghosts. It was not for work, so he naturally would not stay at the Spirit Sequencer Association to do research. Su Changxing's offer was extremely tempting. If it were anyone else, regardless of whether they had other goals in mind, they would probably agree first. Su Changxing let Su Shinro be Li Daochong's assistant and assist Li Daochong in his research. He gave Li Daochong the position of chairman of the Scarlet Sun Stars Spirit Sequencer Association. This was a very high position that was usually held by first-grade spirit sequencers. "Grandpa, Li Daochong is so young. Although he's very talented, isn't it a bit too hasty to let him be chairman?" After Li Daochong left, Su Shinro asked Su Changxing with a puzzled expression. Don't just look at things on the surface. Grandpa wants to ask you, how old is Li Daochong this year?" Su Changxing asked with narrowed eyes. "It's on the information. 19 years old." Su Shinro did not understand. 19 years old, able to make a level 10 spirit talisman, get first place in the test, qualify for the final exam of 100 schools, the most valued student of my old friend Qian Changhai, the son of the #1 person in Blue Bay Star, Li Tianyang. He was nothing before, but in a short year, he changed so much. What do you think is the most reasonable explanation? Su Changxing asked. Doesn't know? Su Shinro replied in confusion. She didn't think that much. If it wasn't for an amazing fortuitous encounter, then he was taken in as a disciple by an almighty who wandered the world. Otherwise, there's no other explanation, Su Changxing said earnestly. Almighty? Grandpa, are you talking about those old monsters in the Federation? Su Shinro asked in surprise. Other than those few, Grandpa really can't think of anyone else in the Federation who has such ability. In the future, you should interact more with Li Daochong. Maybe it will be very helpful for you in the future. This kid's future is limitless. Old Qian is really lucky. Li Daochong actually became his disciple. Su Changxing's tone carried a bit of jealousy. Li Daochong had already started making level 10 spirit talismans. Before he left, he asked Su Changxing for a tael of spirit ink to make level 10 spirit talismans. Li Daochong originally planned to buy it with money, but Su Changxing refused. He only said that Li Daochong could work part-time at the Spirit Sequencer Association after the joint exam of 100 schools. If he agreed, he would give the spirit ink to Su Changxing for free. This tael of spirit ink was worth at least tens of thousands of elementary spirit stones, which was hundreds of millions of Federation coins. It was impossible to work for a long time, but Li Daochong could still accept working part-time for a short period of time. Moreover, after the joint exam of 100 schools, he still had to continue making spirit talismans. There was no place more suitable than the Spirit Sequencer Association for making spirit talismans. Li Daochong naturally agreed. This tale of Spirit Inc. could make at least 3 level 10 spirit talismans. However, Li Daochong hadn't tried it yet, so there was a high chance of failure. But he still had to make it for the first time. For the next 3 days, Li Daochong didn't eat or sleep as he calmly made spirit talismans. In the end, at the cost of 2 failures, he successfully made a level 10 fire talisman. It was also a strengthened version. There were still 4 days left before the joint exam of 100 schools. All candidates had to arrive at Kangwu Planet 3 days in advance. There was no need to take the space shuttle to Kangwu Planet. They could directly teleport there through the teleportation formation. Naturally, the cost was high, but the Federation was willing to spend money for those who qualified for the joint exam of 100 schools. Li Daochong rested for a day before packing up and heading to the central building of Crimson Sun City. There was only one small spirit light teleportation formation on Crimson Sun Planet there. When Li Daochong arrived, there were already more than 10 students gathered in the central building. They were all candidates who had qualified for the joint exam of 100 schools. The central building was heavily guarded. Ordinary people couldn't enter. Usually, only cultivators with status could enter once after paying a high price. There were 4 guards outside the entrance. They were all cultivators at the peak stage of the Qi condensation realm. Li Daochong showed them the pass card when he entered. There was also a mid-stage foundation establishment elder at the entrance. The Spirit Light teleportation formation was on the 9th floor of the central building. There was nothing on this floor except for a 5-meter-wide Spirit Light teleportation formation in the center. Li Daochong walked out of the Spirit Light floating stairs and looked around. Suddenly, a familiar and graceful figure came into view. Li Daochong was surprised. Why was she here? Chapter 298. Li Daochong was very surprised that Wei Ziying would appear here. Li Daochong had almost forgotten about this person after their last parting. If they hadn't met today, he wouldn't have thought of Wei Ziying. Although the two of them had gone through hardships together on the Ghost Flying Shuttle, Li Daochong didn't have a good impression of Wei Ziying. Li Daochong never liked this kind of girl with a strong background, outstanding strength, and outstanding temperament. After feeling a little surprised, Li Daochong walked to the side, as if nothing had happened, and quietly waited for the Spirit Light teleportation formation to open. In the entire Scarlet Sun planet, there were only about 20 students who qualified for the joint examination. It was slightly more than Blue Bay Star, but it was still very limited. At this moment, every single one of the youths who appeared here was a genius of the Scarlet Sun planet. However, the most dazzling person here was undoubtedly Wei Ziying. Her appearance made everyone else pale in comparison. The difference wasn't small at all. Wei Ziying wasn't from Scarlet Sun planet. She was from Kangwu planet. She appeared here today because she had been cultivating in seclusion in Scarlet Sun planet's Scarlet Sun Training Hall. Wei Ziying was also participating in the joint examination, but her slot was on Kangwu planet and not Scarlet Sun planet. Not only that, Wei Ziying was also one of the top 10 seeded contestants in this joint examination. Peak Foundation establishment at the age of 20 was unimaginable on a 4th-class cultivation planet. The top geniuses on Scarlet Sun planet were only at the early stage of Foundation establishment, and they had only reached this stage by relying on spirit herbs. Wei Ziying stood quietly in front of the Spirit Light teleportation formation with her eyes closed. Beside her were 2 young people wearing heaven-grade robes. They didn't seem to be from Scarlet Sun planet either. Their auras were extremely powerful, and they were definitely at the middle stage of Foundation establishment. The 2 young people were eagerly talking to Wei Ziying, but the latter didn't seem to hear them and occasionally replied with a short sentence. Wei Ziying was completely focused and didn't care about anything around her. She only wanted to hurry to her hometown, Kangwu Planet. There were still 3 days to rest when she got home, and then the joint examination of 100 schools would be next. From the moment her spirit vein awakened, the joint examination of 100 schools was always on her mind. Wei Ziying was determined to enter one of the 4 great academies. Although the Wei clan was powerful and controlled the Shadow Serene Square, most of their businesses were shady. Wei Ziying wasn't willing to hide underground. She wanted to wash the Wei family clean. More importantly, she wanted to realize her dream of becoming one of the core members of the Shenghua Federation. The 2 young masters, Ouyang Ju and Chen Yifeng, were attracted to Wei Ziying at first sight. If it wasn't for the powerful aura emitting from the latter's body, they would have already gone up to strike up a conversation. These 2 were already the top young talents of Scarlet Sun Planet. There was no need to mention Ouyang Ju, the first successor of the Ouyang family, one of the 4 great families. Chen Yifeng was the eldest son of the mayor of Scarlet Sun Planet. Both of them had successfully built their foundation. Apart from the 2 of them, none of the disciples from the other 3 great clans had built their foundation. The Yin family didn't cultivate to begin with, so no one was participating in the joint examination of 100 schools this time. Recently, the Ouyang clan has been suffering from bad luck. Rumor has it that the old ancestor, Ouyang clan, is in the Ouyang clan. Are you trying to frighten me with your pain? Shan Lai? Lok Xinhuan, trekking guide. However, a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. The Ouyang family supported Ouyang Ju's cultivation regardless of the cost, allowing him to build his foundation before the joint examination of 100 schools began. The Ouyang family had already placed all their hopes on Ouyang Ju, allowing him to use the family's resources freely. As long as he could achieve good results in the joint examination of 100 schools, the Ouyang family would be able to maintain their reputation as one of the 4 great families of Scarlet Sun Planet. When Li Daochong walked out of the floating staircase, Ouyang Ju saw him. "Brother Chen, that kid is here." Ouyang Ju pursed his lips. Chen Yifeng turned around and glanced at Li Daochong. With a cold face he said, Jiaran is ignoring me now. It's all thanks to this kid. When we reach Kangwu Planet, the first person I'll teach him a lesson will be him. Ouyang Ju smiled sinisterly. Why wait until we reach Kangwu Planet? We can teach him a lesson now. Although this kid is powerful, you and I haven't been idle these past few months. We didn't eat the spirit-cultivating pills for nothing. Chen Yifeng frowned. Here? That's not very convenient. The central building doesn't allow private fights. This place is directly under the jurisdiction of Kangwu Planet. Even though my father is the mayor of Scarlet Sun City, he doesn't have the authority to interfere. The guards at the entrance are all very high-ranking. There are even Jin Dan cultivators among them. If we fight here, we will be disqualified. Ouyang Ju said in a low voice, We don't have to do it ourselves. That fairy-like girl isn't from Scarlet Sun Planet. She's most likely just passing by to borrow the teleportation array of Scarlet Sun Planet. From what I can see, that girl is not only powerful, but her background isn't simple either. The 2 youngsters surrounding her must also have an extraordinary background. Perhaps we can make use of them to teach that kid Li Daochong a lesson. Chen Yifeng narrowed his eyes and said with interest, How do we make use of them? Ouyang Ju said with a cunning face, That's easy, Brother Chen. Ouyang Ju's voice became lower and lower. In the end, only his lips moved, but no sound came out. Chen Yifeng's expression was very interesting as he nodded repeatedly. Then, the 2 of them walked towards Li Daochong. Seeing Ouyang Ju and Chen Yifeng walking over, Li Daochong frowned slightly, and a light flashed in his eyes. The 2 of them walked up to Li Daochong and greeted him warmly. Ouyang Ju smiled and praised Li Daochong for being so powerful. Li Daochong looked at Ouyang Ju's fake smile and felt that something was wrong. Brother Li, you were in the limelight during the joint examination. You were number 1 in the direct examination. There has never been such a godly person on planet Crimson Sun before. Compared to you, Brother Chen and I are ashamed of our inferiority. If there was any misunderstanding between us, I, Ouyang-ju, would like to apologize to you. Ouyang-ju spoke to Li Daochong for the first time. Li Daochong was surprised that he could say such words. Did the sun rise from the west? One shouldn't hit a smiling person. Hearing Ouyang-ju's words, Li Daochong couldn't treat him coldly. He continued, the past has long been forgotten. Today we only have one identity, the examinees of the joint examination of 100 schools. Let's work hard together. Chen Yifeng also said, that's right. Brother Li, I wish you success in this joint examination of 100 schools. Li Daochong cupped his hands and said, same to you. Ouyang-ju saw that the greetings were almost over. He rolled his eyes and said, Brother Li, that girl looks very unfamiliar. She shouldn't be a local, but her appearance is really out of this world. She's as beautiful as a fairy. I think only a talent like Brother Li is worthy of her. Li Daochong glanced at Ouyang-ju and smiled. Brother Ouyang, if you like her, don't use me as a shield. Ouyang-ju continued, how could I? I'm telling the truth. If I had half of Brother Li's elegance, I would have come forward to get to know her. But I don't have half of Brother Li's elegance. Ouyang-ju and Chen Yifeng spared no effort in their pursuit of Li Daochong, attracting a lot of attention. Everyone in the hall noticed that the three of them were gathered together, talking and laughing. Li Daochong naturally didn't believe that the two of them had changed their minds. He had been on guard in his heart, and his words were watertight. After a while, Ouyang-ju and Chen Yifeng left without saying goodbye, leaving Li Daochong behind. Li Daochong looked indifferently at the backs of the two guys who were up to something. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and he smelled the scent of a conspiracy. Ouyang-ju and Chen Yifeng walked up to Wei Ziying and the others with sinister smiles on their faces. The two young men around Wei Ziying glanced at the two of them with disdain. Coming from a second-class cultivation planet, they naturally looked down on this group of bastards from the Red Sun planet. Leave if you know what's good for you, one of the young men said coldly. He didn't want these two bastards to disturb Wei Ziying. This young man was the descendant of the Feng family of the Kangwu planet. His cultivation level was at the middle stage of foundation establishment, and he was a student of the super class of Kangwu University. He was also one of Wei Ziying's many pursuers, Feng Yuanjing. The other young man had an even bigger background. He was the son of the Cloud Jade Robe's president of the Kangwu planet Tu Muxian. His cultivation level was at the late stage of foundation establishment. Friend, please don't be impatient. We'll leave after saying a few words. Ouyang-ju didn't get angry at all, and said with a pleasant face. Ouyang-ju didn't dare to vent his anger. The other party was a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator, and his identity wasn't simple either. He obviously wasn't someone he could provoke. Spit it out. Feng Yuanjing said impatiently. Ouyang-ju and Chen Yifeng looked at each other. They saw a trace of anger in each other's eyes, but more of it was forbearance. These two young masters, when had anyone ever spoken to them like this on the Red Sun planet? However, the other party's forcefulness showed that he had an extraordinary background. Ouyang-ju swallowed his anger and said with a smile, Friend, someone said that you two are like two flies buzzing around this fairy. It's disgusting. Who said that? I think he's tired of living. Feng Yuanjing grabbed Ouyang-ju's collar and said coldly. Him. Ouyang-ju pointed at Li Daochong. Feng Yuanjing came all the way to the Red Sun planet for Wei Ziying. He had been waiting in front of the Divine Light Array since early this morning. After Wei Ziying came, he spared no effort to please her, but the former always ignored him. Feng Yuanjing's mood had already dropped to the freezing point. Now that he heard someone call him a fly, he was furious. Tu Muxian was the same, but he was obviously smarter than Feng Yuanjing. Just as the latter pushed Ouyang-ju away and walked towards Li Daochong, Tu Muxian said to Ouyang-ju, "Are you sure that kid said that?" Ouyang-ju nodded. "Absolutely." Tu Muxian smiled. "You were talking and laughing with that kid just now, and now you're telling us to make things difficult for him. It's obvious that you two have a grudge. Otherwise, there's no way to explain your actions. You want to use us to teach that kid a lesson." Ouyang-ju's face was serious. "Absolutely not. I actually want to be friends with you, hoping to find a backer in the 100 Schools Alliance exam." Tu Muxian chuckled. "I can believe your reason. Although I don't like sinister and cunning people like you, I don't like people speaking ill of me behind my back even more." Tu Muxian walked towards Li Daochong, his eyes cold. He dared to call him a fly? Then I'll turn you into a fly. Ouyang-ju and Chen Yifeng looked at each other and smiled, then followed to watch the show. After the four of them left, Wei Ziying slowly opened her eyes and looked in the direction where they had left. Immediately, Wei Ziying's beautiful eyes widened. Chapter 299. How could Wei Ziying forget Li Daochong? Back then, this guy had swindled her out of a huge sum of money. A total of 100 million Federation coins. Wei Ziying was the daughter of Kangwu Planet's Wei family. Her status and incomparable talent made it so no one dared to disrespect her. Anyone who dared to disrespect her was courting death. There was always an exception, and Li Daochong was one of them. Back then, this kid was only in the middle stage of qi condensation, but he dared to take advantage of Wei Ziying's injury and sell her a pill for 100 million Federation coins. However, that pill had indeed cured Wei Ziying's underworld flame and hidden injuries. Wei Ziying was very curious about such a miraculous pill. If she could get her hands on a few more pills, it would be like having another life-saving trump card. Therefore, Wei Ziying did not swallow the pure white dew pill that Li Daochong had given her at that time. Instead, she bit off a bit and wrapped it in spirit energy, then brought it back to Kangwu Planet for analysis. Wei Ziying wanted to analyze the composition of the pure white dew pill and try to concoct some. However, the results of the analysis made Wei Ziying's jaw drop. What kind of elixir was this? Bulsh *T pure white dew pill was just an ordinary recovery elixir that could be bought anywhere on the market for 1 or 2,000 federal coins. Wei Ziying was confused. Since the elixir that Li Daochong gave him was fake, why did his serious injuries get better after taking the elixir? Wei Ziying finally told this to her grandfather, Wei Beitong. After hearing Wei Ziying's story, Wei Beitong became very interested in Li Daochong. Wei Beitong was one of the few medicine refiners in the Shenghua Federation. The reason why the Wei family could become a superfamily and control an underground force like the Shadow Serene Square was because of Wei Beitong. Even if the core members of the Federation knew about the Wei family's shady business, they would turn a blind eye to it. Wei Beitong's connections were all over the Federation, including the ruler of the Federation. A one-star alchemist was a supreme existence in the medical world. Wei Beitong's special grade and one-star grade spirit herbs were something that all the major powers wanted to get their hands on. Wei Beitong was proficient in cultivation, healing, and recovery. No one was willing to offend a one-star alchemist, not even those Yuanian grand cultivators, or even the legendary deity transformation stage human immortals. After taking Wei Ziying's pulse, Wei Beitong was even more shocked. He knew his granddaughter's condition better than anyone else. Not only did Wei Ziying's body not have a single trace of Yin underworld fire left, even the minor injuries from before had completely healed. In fact, she was even stronger than before she was injured. At that time, Wei Beitong's old eyes shone brightly, as if he had discovered a treasure trove. Wei Ziying could not understand Wei Beitong's current state. She had been tricked, so why was her grandfather so happy? Grandpa, why are you so happy that Ziying was cheated? Wei Ziying asked angrily. Ziying, the medicine is fake, but your injuries are completely healed. There is only one explanation, it was not medicine that healed your injuries, but a person. Wei Beitong replied meaningfully. A person. Wei Ziying pondered. That's right, it was a person. I just checked your spirit meridians, and they are stronger than before. There is a trace of pure spirit qi in your body. In the ancient cultivation era, before cultivation and medicine refinement technology reached the level of industrialization, treatment was usually done by a person. They used acupuncture, qi manipulation, and other methods that were extremely difficult to master. These methods seemed clumsy and had many limitations, but they were very effective and had no side effects. Wei Beitong explained. Grandpa, you mean that kid used ancient medical skills to treat Ziying? Wei Ziying opened her eyes slightly and asked. That's right, I guess it was the qi manipulation method. I didn't think that there would be someone who knows the qi manipulation method that has been lost for thousands of years. This kid is not simple. Do you know where he is now? Grandpa wants to meet this little friend. Wei Beitong couldn't wait. He's missing. What? Missing? How many days has it been since you came back from the Blue Bay Star? How could he be missing? Grandpa, take a look for yourself. This is the result of my investigation. Wei Ziying handed Li Daocheng's investigation report to Wei Beitong. After reading Li Daocheng's investigation report, Wei Beitong let loose a torrent of abuse. Blue Bay Star is a bunch of good-for-nothings. Idiots, trash idiot. They actually didn't want this kind of talent. Can't they tell the difference between gold and dung? A bunch of dung machines, I'm so angry. Wei Beitong's face was red. After that, Wei Beitong personally went to the Blue Bay Star, but found nothing. This young man called Li Daocheng seemed to have disappeared from the face of the earth. It wasn't until more than a month ago that there was news. But at that time, Wei Beitong had been preoccupied with important matters and Wei Ziying had already been in seclusion for several months. The search for Li Daocheng was thus put on hold. Wei Ziying knew that Li Daocheng was on Red Sun Planet, but how could she think of him at this juncture? The only thing on her mind was the joint examination of 100 schools and nothing else. Wei Ziying hadn't expected Li Daocheng to appear here. It seemed that he must have also gone to Kangwu Planet to prepare for the joint examination of 100 schools. When Feng Yuanzheng heard Ouyang Ju's words, he was burning with rage. He walked up to Li Daocheng and reached out to grab his collar. Li Daocheng didn't move. He floated backwards, and Feng Yuanzheng grabbed nothing but air. Trash from a fourth-class cultivation planet. Someone said that you called me a fly behind my back. Kneel down, apologize, and kowtow 3 times, and I won't pursue the matter. What do you think? Feng Yuanzheng looked a little surprised that he had missed. You'd better go away while I'm still in a good mood. Li Daocheng's gaze was extremely cold, and the aura in his body was surging slightly. Li Daocheng was a little angry. It wasn't because of this guy who had hooted at him, but because the despicable and shameless actions of Ouyang Ju and Chen Yifeng had touched Li Daocheng's bottom line. Trash, what did you say? Say it again. Feng Yuanzheng wondered if there was something wrong with his ears. There was actually someone who dared to speak to him like that on a fourth-class cultivation planet. Scram, Li Daocheng said in a deep voice as he suddenly released his aura. Feng Yuanzheng was caught off guard and his mind buzzed. He almost fell to the ground. Tu Muxian, who had just arrived, stopped in his tracks. Even he might not be able to produce such a powerful sound wave. Ouyang Ju and Chen Yifeng, who were behind Tu Muxian, were in an even better state. They staggered and almost fell. Fortunately, there was a pillar to support them, so they didn't fall. The other students standing around didn't feel anything. That scram was nothing special. Li Daochong was only targeting these 4 people. The others weren't attacked. Feng Yuanjing was completely enraged. Although there were guards around the spirit light array, they were all 4th-class administrative level. Feng Yuanjing didn't put them in his eyes. You dare to plot against me? You're courting death. Feng Yuanjing said as he punched towards Li Daochong. The fist of a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator could split mountains and crush stones. It was no joke. There was a world of difference between a cultivator and a cultivator. This punch was enough to collapse a building. Li Daochong's lips slightly curved. Just as he was about to make a move, a delicate shout sounded. Stop! This delicate shout also carried a sound wave attack. Not only did it shake their eardrums, it also made their minds chaotic. Wei Ziying didn't restrain herself like Li Daochong. Her voice covered the whole place. All the students of Red Sun Planet covered their heads and sat on the ground. Ouyang Ju and Chen Yifeng were no exception. Only Li Daochong stood there as if nothing had happened. Feng Yuanjing's raised fist was suspended in the air. This delicate shout went straight to his heart, causing his body to go numb. Tu Muxian revealed a strange expression. Wei Ziying hadn't left the spirit light array since this morning. Her eyes were closed, waiting to be teleported. At this moment, not only did Wei Ziying open her eyes, she also let out such a fierce shout. Her expression was not good, as if she was very angry with Feng Yuanjing's actions. Tu Muxian smiled. He was smart. He wasn't like that idiot Feng Yuanjing who was instigated by others and lost his head in anger. Ziying, this brat scolded me. Didn't you hear it? Feng Yuanjing saw Wei Ziying walking over and quickly explained. Wei Ziying didn't even look at Feng Yuanjing. As for his words, she acted as if she didn't hear it. She walked straight to Li Daochong. Li Daochong. Wei Ziying looked at Li Daochong with curiosity in her eyes. Owner Wei. Li Daochong smiled and nodded. Perhaps I should call you Mr. Li. Wei Ziying tapped the tip of her nose with her slender index finger and looked thoughtfully at Li Daochong. As you wish, Owner Wei. Li Daochong shrugged. My grandfather wants to see you. Do you have time? Wei Ziying went straight to the point. No. Li Daochong replied straightforwardly. No? How can that be? You must be participating in the joint exam. There are still 3 days until the exam. How can you not have time? Do you know who my grandfather is? Wei Ziying frowned. She didn't expect Li Daochong to refuse so straightforwardly. There were tens of millions of people who wanted to see Wei Beitong, if not 100 million. There was even a cultivator from the Yuanying who was willing to spend 1 million elementary spirit stones just to have a meal with Wei Beitong. This brat actually told Wei Beitong that he didn't have time? There must be something wrong with his brain. Old Ghost Zhang told me who your grandfather is. Of course I know who he is. It's not important who he is. I really don't have time. I don't want to be distracted by anything before the joint exam. Li Daochong replied indifferently. All right then. Do you have time after the joint exam? Wei Ziying compromised. Feng Yuanjing and Tu Muxian were dumbfounded when they heard the conversation between Wei Ziying and this unfamiliar young man. Feng Yuanjing's legs trembled slightly and went limp. His mind went blank and he barely managed to stand up. Wei Beitong knew this brat and wanted to see him. Feng Yuanjing actually wanted to attack him just now. Feng Yuanjing's face was ashen. Tu Muxian smiled lightly. Feng Yuanjing, this love rival, could be eliminated. 1 less was 1 less. He could take it slow. We'll see, Li Daochong replied casually. Chapter 300. Li Daochong's rejection of the invitation made Wei Ziying unhappy. What kind of person was her grandfather? Not many people in the entire Federation dared to reject her grandfather's invitation. Li Daochong didn't care about what Wei Ziying was thinking. After hearing the old man's words, he walked towards the teleportation array. The teleportation array was the fastest and most convenient means of transportation. It was more than 10,000 times faster than the space shuttle. It only took a few seconds to travel from one location to another. The only drawback was that it consumed a lot of energy. A single long-distance teleportation would consume at least 10,000 elementary spirit stones. There were more than 20 people in front of him. Teleporting to the distant Kangwoo planet in one go would consume close to 300,000 spirit stones. If they took the space shuttle and carried hundreds of people, it would only cost a few thousand spirit stones to travel from Crimson Sun Planet to Kangwoo Planet. However, it would take 3 days. It was Li Daocheng's first time entering the teleportation array. He couldn't help but be curious. He wanted to see how it felt to be teleported. After everyone entered the teleportation array, the old man immediately activated the teleportation array. The 20 people were enveloped by a white glow. When the white glow dissipated, they disappeared without a trace. Li Daocheng only saw a flash of light in front of him. Then, a spatial door appeared in front of him. He stepped out of it. His vision suddenly opened up. His surroundings were a little blurry at first, but they soon became clear. Green mountains and clear waters. Birds chirped and flowers bloomed. The 20 examinees appeared at the foot of a lush mountain. This was also the location of a teleportation array. However, it wasn't as heavily guarded as the Crimson Sun Planet. The teleportation array was set up in the open. There were only 2 guards sitting at the side. However, both of them had reached the Foundation establishment stage. Wang Xiang and Chun Lin were soldiers of the Kangwoo Planet's Border Defense Army. Both of them were second lieutenant. The guards of the teleportation array would be rotated every 3 years. The 2 of them had been guarding it for half a year now. Seeing the 20 examinees appear, the 2 of them didn't pay much attention at first. The teleportation array had been unusually busy these few days. Almost every day, there would be more than 10 batches of examinees arriving at Kangwoo Planet from all over the 4th Ring starfield. However, when the light from the teleportation array disappeared completely, the appearance of the 20 examinees could be seen clearly. Wei Ziying's appearance made Wang Xiang and Chun Lin suck in a breath of cold air. The 2 of them quickly stood up and bowed respectfully. Mississippi Wei Ziying nodded and waved her hand. There's no need to be so courteous. I'm just a student of the joint examination. You guys can go about your business. The 2 of them then returned to their seats. Whoosh! A luxurious flying shuttle descended from the sky. Oh my God, it is the Emperor's shuttle. Someone among the examinees. Ouyang Ju and Chen Yifeng, the 2 young masters' eyeballs almost fell to the ground. Even though they were from prominent families on planet Scarlet Sun, this was the first time they had seen the Saint Emperor's flying shuttle with their own eyes. Was Emperor's flying, the space was the Emperor's too. Of the world of Emperor S was. To the Emperor's world. Emperors. To of it of it. Of the of it of song. Tease. Was. Of the of. The entire body of the shuttle was made of purple mystic devil silver. It was a large artifact with many functions. It could even be used as a small shuttle. The White Emperor's shuttle landed in front of Wei Ziying. The door opened and a middle-aged man with a medium build and a serious expression came out. He was a mid-stage Jin Dan cultivator. Li Daocheng's pupils shrank. Wei Ziying's status seemed to be higher than he had imagined. Meng Yu welcomes Miss out of seclusion. The middle-aged man said respectfully. Thank you. Wei Ziying nodded slightly and turned to Li Daocheng. Mr. Li, where do you want to go? I will send you. Li Daocheng smiled. Thank you for your kindness, Owner Wei. This is my first time in Kangwoo Planet and I would like to look around. I will not trouble you. Up to you. Wei Ziying's tone turned cold after being rejected again. She then boarded the space shuttle without looking back. Meng Yu looked at Li Daocheng strangely and boarded the shuttle as well. With a whoosh, the space shuttle flew into the sky and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Other than the sound of the space shuttle breaking through the air, the space shuttle did not make a single sound. Li Daochong did not know any of the candidates on planet Crimson Sunday. Those that he did know had conflicts with each other. Li Daochong naturally would not move with them. He was afraid that he would not be able to control himself and cripple Ouyang Ju and Chen Yifeng. That would be troublesome. Li Daochong was not afraid of revenge from their families, but he did not want to cause trouble. Li Daochong entered the spiritual nexus and found a map of planet Kangwu. He then left silently. After walking for a while, Li Daochong took out his Tsang ink and flew towards Tsang Cloud City. Before long, Li Daochong received 3 messages on his wristwatch. One was from Qian Changhai, wishing him good result. The other was from Ding Fugui, that little fatty. It had been more than a month since they last met. Brother Li, Leader Qin asked me to come to planet Kangwu to receive you until the end of the joint examination. Send me your location when you reach planet Kangwu. I'll go find you. The third message was from Yin Ping. Young Master, when are you coming back? There seems to be a problem with Master's closed-door cultivation. He hasn't sent any news for 2 months. Come back quickly. The corners of Li Daochong's eyes twitched when he saw Yin Ping's message. His father had said that he would be in closed-door cultivation for 3 months. But for some reason, it had been delayed again and again. Now, almost half a year had passed, but he still had not come out. At first, Li Daochong had been a little worried, but every time Li Tianyang sent a message, he said that there was no problem. His cultivation was steadily improving, and he was in good condition. With Li Qinyao and Yin Ping around, Li Daochong believed that nothing would happen. However, just as the joint examination was about to begin, Silver Bottle sent such a message. This made Li Daochong feel uneasy. During this time, Li Daochong had been so busy that he had forgotten to contact Yin Ping. When he saw the message, he immediately replied, "See you in 7 days." 3 days later, the joint examination of 100 schools would officially begin. Li Daochong did not need to participate in the initial test of the 10,000 ghost array and the second test. He directly entered the final test. For Li Daochong, the official test was in 5 days. The final test was divided into 2 parts, a written test and an actual combat test. Although many things had happened recently, Li Daochong had not left Blue Bay Star for long. It had only been a little more than 2 months. After Li Daochong replied, Yin Ping quickly replied with one word. Okay. This girl's simplicity was reflected in her words and actions. After not seeing her for more than 2 months, Li Daochong really missed her. After the joint examination of 100 schools ended, Li Daochong needed to decide what to do next based on his result. His initial plan was to bring Yin Ping, Li Qinyao, and Li Tianyang to planet Crimson Sunday. Now that Li Daochong had changed his mind, perhaps planet Kangwu was the best choice. With so many strange things happening on planet Crimson Sun, it seemed very unsafe. The hot-blooded upgrader in Li Daochong's body had become very restless recently and would occasionally emit a slight alarm. It was an indisputable fact that Hades's actions were increasing. The news reported every day that the situation at the front line was getting more and more tense. After Li Daochong sent the message to Yin Ping, he immediately replied to Ding Fugui, telling him that he had arrived at planet Kangwu. Half an hour later, Li Daochong was still in the same spot as a high-end commercial flying shuttle descended from the sky. Ding Fugui excitedly came down from the flying shuttle. Brother Li, I haven't seen you for more than a month. I missed you so much, the little fatty said in a mushy manner. At the same time, he stretched out his arms to hug Li Daochong with an excited expression. Although Ding Fugui had the intention of befriending Li Daochong, his current state was not fake. It was genuine. After going through life and death on planet tongue pulling, the two of them could be considered friends in adversity. Li Daochong dodged slightly, and Ding Fugui's hug missed. He staggered and almost fell. "Fatty, I heard you got promoted," Li Daochong said with a faint smile. "Hee, it's all thanks to Brotherly. It's all thanks to you that I got promoted." Ding Fugui scratched his head. "Thanks to me? How could that be? You fought for it yourself. Let's not talk about this anymore. Take me around first. I've only been to planet Kangwu when I was young. I've almost forgotten about it." "Okay, Brother Li, get on. My mission for the next few days is to serve you well." "Damn Fatty, don't flatter me. I'm not your superior. You don't have to be like this with me. Speak properly, speak normally. If you don't speak properly, I'll ask Qinzhan for someone else to take care of you." "Don't, I'll speak properly." Ding Fugui was so scared that his head shrank back. "Let's go." 3 hours later, a majestic, prosperous, and bustling cultivation city appeared in front of them. From afar, the sky was densely packed with all kinds of flying shuttles. It was many times denser than Blue Bay Star and Planet Crimson Sunday. This was nothing. Sword kinesis flight cultivators could be seen everywhere. This was rare on a fourth-class cultivation planet. Occasionally, one or two of them would pass through the sky, causing a huge commotion below. Chapter 301 D E E 9L U ZH T N and AP U J2 ZX Cloud City's busiest street. Li Daochong sighed with emotion. A second-class cultivation planet was indeed different. The people shuttling through here all had extraordinary temperament. Qi-gathering stage cultivators could be seen everywhere. Qi-refining stage cultivators were too embarrassed to come out and meet people. Foundation establishment stage cultivators were no longer a rare species. Even Jin Dan cultivators were not rare. Walking a certain distance, one could meet one or two. Ding Fugui took Li Daochong for a stroll for more than 2 hours. Li Daochong even sensed a few abnormally powerful auras passing through the clouds in the sky. It was the aura of Yuanying cultivators. Kanwu Star was really different from Scarlet Sun and Blue Bay. This was a true cultivation planet. Cultivators could be seen everywhere. "Brotherly, I'll take you to Tsangyan City's Idle Cloud Street for a drink tonight. I heard that the spirit wine there is the best in Tsangyan City. If you don't drink Tsangyan City's ancient crossing wine, it's a waste to come to Tsangyan City." Ding Fugui said excitedly. "Oh, is that so? Then I'll have to taste it." Li Daochong replied with interest. "It's getting late. Let's go now. I'm afraid there won't be any seats if we're late." Ding Fugui glanced at his wristwatch. "Okay." Li Daochong nodded. Ding Fugui immediately called the driver to drive the flying shuttle over. The two boarded the shuttle and flew into the sky. Half an hour later, Ding Fugui brought Li Daochong to Tsangyan City's most famous tavern street, Ancient Crossing Blue Ox. According to legend, Ancient Crossing Blue Ox was a ferry in the ancient cultivation era. It was next to Tsangjiang. The reason why Tsangjiang was called Tsangjiang was that in the ancient cultivation era, a dragon lived in this surging river. After cultivating for hundreds of years, it flew into the sky. Since then, the longest, widest, and fastest river on Kangwu Star was named Tsangjiang. Ancient Crossing Blue Ox was an important ferry crossing Tsangjiang. However, the ancient Green Ox ferry was no longer a ferry port. With the arrival of the Great Cultivation Era, the ferry port was eliminated. With flying shuttles, ferrying could only be regarded as a form of entertainment. However, the pub street next to Qingyo-gudu has always existed. Today, it has become one of the most important entertainment places in Tsangyan City. Both ordinary people and cultivators liked to come here for leisure and entertainment. The ancient Green Ox ferry became synonymous with Tavern Street. For the whole afternoon, Li Daochong seemed to be strolling around with Ding Fugui, but in fact, he had been releasing his psychic power to search for ghosts along the way. This had long since become Li Daochong's habit. It wasn't deliberate, but an instinct. Li Daochong was not willing to miss any opportunity to absorb the nether ghost power. However, there wasn't even a trace of death aura here. There wasn't even any resentment formed by human resentment. The dark parasol star was far safer than Li Daochong had imagined. The dark ghost's claws could not reach this place. Thinking about it, one could meet Yuanian cultivators on the street. No matter how crafty the Hades were, they could not hide in front of a great cultivator. It was not like on a fourth-class cultivation planet, where Jean Dan cultivators were extremely rare. The dark ghost could easily take advantage of this loophole. It was not so easy here. Without the power of the witch ghost, one would be seen through with a single glance. Yuanian cultivators could use their psychic power to disperse the dark ghost below the soul-devouring ghost level and make it disappear into nothingness. The ancient green ox ferry maintained the appearance of an old street from ancient times. The restaurants here did not have modern names. They all used the names from the ancient cultivation era. For example, Pleasant Arrival Inn, Drunken Immortal Pavilion, Verdant House, Juxian House, Great Music Bar, etc. The interior and exterior decorations were also in the ancient style. Entering the ancient Green Ox Ferry, one felt as if they had transmigrated to the ancient cultivation era. The moment Ding Fugui arrived at the ancient Green Ox Ferry, he felt as light as a feather. He walked with the wind and was in high spirit. He brought Li Daochong to a small alley on the east side of the street. Although it was called an alley, it was not remote at all. On the contrary, it was quite lively, even more so than the ancient main street outside. Li Daochong was unfamiliar with this place. He listened to Ding Fugui's explanations along the way and followed him here. There was only one tavern in the alley. It was brightly lit and had a very imposing entrance. However, when Li Daochong came to the entrance and looked up, the corners of his eyes twitched. There were 3 large words written on the door. Xuanfang Brothel. The entrance was decorated with lanterns and banners. Large red lanterns hung high, and a row of beautiful women dressed in ancient sexy clothes stood at the entrance. They welcomed every guest who entered with seductive eyes. Li Daochong silently looked at Ding Fugui. This damn fatty actually brought him to a brothel. It was legal to open a brothel in the Federation. Firstly, it was to stimulate the economy. Secondly, it was to reduce crime. Red Sun Star and Blue Bay Star also had similar places. However, Li Daochong had never been there and was not very interested. It was not that Li Daochong was not interested in women. It was just that he did not have the time to think about such things at that time. If it was said that in front of a beautiful woman, how could a hot-blooded man not be moved? However, in a life-and-death situation, even if you were a pervert, you would not think about women. Brotherly, before the big exam, Fugui feels that relaxing is more important than anything else. You won't blame me for bringing you to this kind of place, right? Ding Fugui asked carefully. Ding Fugui did not bring Li Daochong here on the spur of the moment. He had thought about it long ago. This damn fatty did not believe that there was a man in this world who did not like beautiful women, unless there was something wrong with him. Damn fatty, you wanted to come here on your own, right? Li Daochong replied indifferently. Brotherly, of course I wanted to come. How can the world's beautiful scenery compare to that delicate and beautiful body? Since ancient times, heroes have a weakness for the charms of beautiful women. Moreover, I am not a hero, so it is even more impossible for me to pass the charms of beautiful women. Vulgar desires are inevitable. Ding Fugui replied with a smile. If it was said that Li Daochong was not at all curious about this kind of place, then it would definitely be a lie. Seeing the row of tall beauties wearing thin gauze shirts, revealing their breasts and legs, he naturally felt a little moved. Of course, Li Daochong only trembled for a moment. With a turn of his telekinesis, his mind became clear, and then his eyes became clear. The big exam was just around the corner. Even if Li Daochong wanted to relax, he would not use this kind of method to focus on cultivation. However, Li Daochong heard that this kind of place was more popular in the higher class of cultivators. He heard it from the perverted old man Qian Changhai. Li Daochong also did not want to be a noob. There was no harm in experiencing it, as long as he did not really do anything. After Ding Fugue finished speaking, he saw that Li Daochong did not speak. His expression did not change, as if he was thinking about something. Brotherly, if you are not willing to enter this kind of place, then let's change to a more elegant tavern to drink. Ding Fugue revealed a disappointed expression. However, no matter how much he desired it, he did not dare to make Li Daochong unhappy. Since we are already here, let's do it here. Li Daochong finally opened his mouth. Alright, Brother Li, let's go in. I have been here a few times before. There are a few ladies here that are like fairies in the human world. Their beauty is beyond compare. Let me introduce you. Ding Fugue was suddenly overjoyed. With that, Ding Fugue could not wait to step into Xuanfang courtyard. Oh, isn't this Ding Xiao? It's been a while since you left last time. Where did you go to make a fortune? You don't even take the time to take care of the ladies' business. A middle-aged woman, wearing an ancient-style madam's clothes, immediately greeted Ding Fugue when she saw him. Li Daochong's eyes were impermanent, but in his heart, he scolded the dead fatty. The madam's words were very obvious. This dead fatty was a regular here, not just a few times. Am I not here now? Ding Fugue said with a smile. Ding Xiao, do you still order that girl Xing'er? The madam's enthusiasm was like fire. Her pair of eyes looking at Ding Fugue were full of Federation coins. The madam was deeply impressed by Ding Fugue. This little fatty, who seemed to be unknown, was very generous. He was more generous than many of the rich young masters of the families in Songyun City. Money seemed to be just a number for him. This kind of guest who spent money like running water was the god of Xuanfang courtyard, and must be served well. Don't worry about me first. I brought my big brother here today. If you serve my big brother well, I will reward you heavily. Ding Fugue said as he took out a few spirit stones from his storage bag and stuffed them into the madam's hand. The madam's face was full of smiles. She calmly took the spirit stones and put them into her cuff. Only then did the madam notice Li Daochong standing next to Ding Fugue. She looked up and down, and her eyes showed some doubts. This young man didn't look special. In addition to his well-proportioned body and clean appearance, there was no sense of oppression in his aura. Under the detection, the madam's result was only the 5th level of qi refining. This level didn't even have a place in Xuanfang courtyard. Of course, if you have money, you can also arrange for a low-level girl to accompany you, but you will never receive any preferential treatment. Xuanfang Courtyard is a high-end club in Songyun City, but the facade is in the ancient style, catering to the style of Qingyou Street. In fact, it is no different from those high-end clubs. The low-level people who come here are just looking for fun, and the high-end people who come here are making friends and doing business. The madam is very strange. Ding Fugue has a military background and is a non-commissioned officer. The Ding family is also a big merchant with some status in Kangwu Star. If it wasn't for the Ding family being too crippled in cultivation, they would have become a big family in Songyun City. With Ding Fugue's background, why would he call this young man Big Brother? In terms of age, it is also inappropriate. This young man looks not even 20 years old, and there is still some immaturity on his face. Strange is strange, but since Ding Fugue said so, the madam naturally didn't dare to neglect. Perhaps he has some unknown background. In short, the people who come here are either rich or have some special ability. Otherwise, a trip to Xuanfang Courtyard is no joke. As long as you sit down and casually order a few dishes and a pot of wine, you will spend tens of thousands of yuan. If you order a young lady to accompany you, the price will triple. If you come to Xuanfang Courtyard without money, it will be very embarrassing. Therefore, the people who come here, whether they are ordinary people or cultivators, must have some family background. Little brother, how should I address you? The madam immediately asked. My big brother's surname is Mr. Li. You can call him Mr. Li. Ding Fuguei introduced with a serious face. Li Daochong is a godlike man in Ding Fuguei's heart. Everything he experienced on tongue-pulling planet is deeply engraved in Ding Fuguei's mind. It is also because of Li Daochong that he is able to live until now. In addition, Qin Shou and Yu Yan, two powerful people in the military, appreciate him very much. Ding Fuguei worships Li Daochong. Hello Mr. Li, please follow me. The madam greeted and led Ding Fuguei and Li Daochong inside. The interior style of Xuanfang Courtyard was strictly in accordance with the brothel model of the ancient cultivation era. After entering, one would feel as if they had returned to ancient times, if not for the fact that the guests were still wearing the Taoist robes from the great cultivation era. Chapter 302. D. E and OT? RS? H? I2? Z? S? FS? 8Y? Equals? With Ding Fuguei's money, she naturally wouldn't neglect them. She brought the two of them to the second floor and found a table by the window. Young Master Ding, because the exam is coming soon, there are several times more guests than usual. Currently, only this table is empty. What do you think? The brothel keeper asked. Ding Fuguei was a regular customer, so how could he not know the quality of the table? The brothel keeper was right. It was already good to have such a table at this time, so he said, Here it is. The brothel keeper smiled and said, Then young Master Ding and Mr. Li can rest first. I'll call the maids over. As for the dishes, young Master Ding, do you want to order them yourself? Ding Fuguei waved his hand. It's up to you. Serve the good wine and dishes. The brothel keeper liked generous customers like the little fatty who didn't care about money. She nodded and left. As soon as the brothel keeper left, Ding Fuguei said to Li Daochong, Brother Li, the girls in Xuanfang Courtyard are all beautiful. When they come later, you can choose whoever you like. If one isn't enough, you can have two. Ding Fuguei's small eyes flashed as he spoke, but he was interrupted by Li Daochong before he could finish. Damn fatty, I'm just here to take a look. I don't need any maids. When Ding Fuguei heard this, he hurriedly said, Brother Li, as long as you come up to the second floor, regardless of whether you order a maid to accompany you or not, you still have to pay the money that you should pay. Not a single cent less. It would be a waste if you don't order one. Moreover, the maids that the procuress called over will not be retained. They will be taken to the back of the line. If no one personally orders them, there won't be any business today. These maids are probably born poor and have no choice but to do this job. Ding Fuguei's words reminded Li Daochong of Ling Fei. It seemed that she had done a similar job to make a living. Life wasn't easy. Li Daochong thought for a while and said, Okay, when they come later, I'll order one. Ding Fuguei smiled and said, Brother Li, life is too boring if we can't find some fun. These servant girls are very obedient. Li Daochong glared at little Fatty. Damn Fatty, you're quite open-minded. Are you happy that you're here to receive me? Ding Fuguei chuckled. Brother Li, of course I'm happy to receive you. Li Daochong said in a bad mood. I think you have an ulterior motive. Receiving me is just a pretense. Your real purpose is to have fun. After tonight, I won't go anywhere. I'll just wait for the exam to start. Ding Fuguei was disappointed, but he didn't dare show it. He nodded repeatedly and said, That's right, that's right. Participating in the joint examination of 100 schools is the most important thing. While the two of them were talking, the brothel keeper returned. Behind her were 5 beautiful young girls, all of whom were extremely beautiful. They were all top-grade beauties, and they had every kind of figure and face that one could want. Ding Fugue's small, perverted eyes focused on one another. His already small eyes almost disappeared. Li Daocheng's gaze flickered. He swept a glance over the girls before looking away. But the moment he looked away, his body trembled slightly. Li Daocheng doubted if he had seen wrongly. He turned around and looked at the girl standing at the back of the group of 5. Qiao Shima? At the same time, Qiao Shima also saw Li Daocheng. Their eyes met. Both of them were stunned. Neither side had expected to meet here. Li Daocheng's brow furrowed in confusion. What on earth had happened at Blue Bay Star? Why would Qiao Shima appear in a brothel? Qiao Shima's eyes instantly became misty. She lowered her head, not daring to look directly into those familiar eyes. Jasmine, how can you be so rude? Why are you lowering your head in front of a guest? The brothel keeper said coldly. Qiao Shima held back her tears and lifted her head. Seeing this, the brothel keeper's face became even colder. She regretted bringing her out to meet guests. It seemed that she would have to be trained for 2 more days. Ding Fugue was also a little unhappy. He was afraid that he would give Li Daocheng a bad experience. Just as he was about to ask the brothel keeper to bring another batch of girls, Li Daocheng spoke first. Her. Li Daocheng pointed at Qiao Shima. The brothel keeper's cold face became nervous. This new girl wasn't very obedient. Yesterday, she had even rejected the young master of the Shao family. The situation had been very awkward. If the young master of the Shao family hadn't been calculative, Xuanfang Brothel's reputation would have been ruined. Mr. Li, this girl is new. She might not know the rules. Do you want to consider changing her? If it weren't for the lack of manpower today, I wouldn't have brought her out to meet guests, the brothel keeper reminded him worriedly. There's no need to change. This one is pleasing to the eye, Li Daocheng said casually. Since Li Daocheng said so, the brothel keeper didn't say anything else. She tugged at Qiao Shima and whispered, Wretched girl, you better behave well. If something like yesterday happens again, don't meet any more guests. I'll sell you to human traffickers. Qiao Shima's heart was bleeding. She even wanted to die. But she couldn't die. If she died, the Qiao family would be finished. Qiao Shima's dead heart came back to life the moment she saw Li Daocheng. Come here and sit. Li Daocheng patted the seat beside him. Qiao Shima silently lowered her head and sat next to Li Daocheng. Under the brothel keeper's angry gaze, she gently held Li Daocheng's arm. Seeing this, the brothel keeper was slightly relieved. Ding Fugue thoughtlessly ordered 2 girls to accompany him. After a few words of greeting, the brothel keeper left with the other 2 girls. As soon as the brothel keeper left, the waiter served good wine and dishes. Ding Fugue picked up the wine pot and took a deep sniff. With a look of enjoyment, he then said to Li Daocheng, Brother Li, this is Xuanfang Courtyard's special 1,000-flower red. It's made with thousands of spiritual flowers. Not only is it moist and refreshing, but it also has the effect of strengthening the body. A pot of wine costs 120,000 Federation coins. Ordinary people can't afford it. As Ding Fugue spoke, he poured Li Daocheng a full cup. At this time, most of the latter's attention was focused on Qiao Shima. Li Daocheng was curious about Qiao Shima's appearance in such an occasion. Shima, why are you here? Qiao Shima glanced at Ding Fugue and the other 2 girls sitting opposite her and whispered, Don't ask first. I'll drink with you and pretend to be happy. Take me away tonight and I'll tell you slowly. Li Daocheng saw Qiao Shima's nervous and scared expression and seemed to understand something. He glanced around. Since entering Xuanfang Courtyard, he had sensed several powerful auras. The weakest was at the early stage of the Foundation establishment stage, while the strongest was at the peak of the Foundation establishment stage. Xuanfang Courtyard was obviously not as friendly as it seemed on the surface. There were people secretly suppressing the situation. However, it was unknown whether these suppressing cultivators were targeting the guests or the girls. Ding Fugui poured some wine for Li Daochong, then picked up a piece of barbecued meat and placed it on Li Daochong's plate. He said, "Brotherly, try this place's signature dish, Songkuan pork ribs." Songkuan is a specialty of Songjiang and is classified as a 10th grade spirit beast. It can't be found anywhere else. Its meat is delicious and delicate. If eaten for a long time, it can nourish the body. Even if you don't cultivate, you can still reach the 5th level of the body refining realm. It's really good. Li Daochong nodded and immediately picked up a piece for Qiao Shima. The latter forced a smile and said, "Thank you, Mr. Li." Ding Fugui jeered from the side, "Don't just say thank you. Show it with your actions. Girl, it's your fortune to have been chosen by Brother Li today. If you serve Brother Li well, you won't be short of benefits." Young Master Ding, from what you've said, Brother Li must have an extraordinary background. Why don't you introduce him to us? The girl sitting on Ding Fugui's left said sweetly. She was Xing the maidservant that Ding Fugui always picked when he came to Xuanfang Courtyard. Ding Fugui was just about to brag when he met Li Daochong's calm gaze. For some reason, Ding Fugui shivered and understood that Li Daochong didn't want to make it public. Ding Fugui reacted quickly and said, "Brother Li is my big brother. He once saved my life." As Ding Fugui was speaking, there was a commotion on the other side. Several young people in gorgeous Taoist robes came up and interrupted him. Because they were too eye-catching, the guests on the second floor all looked over. Many people seemed to recognize these young people. Next to Ding Fugui, Xing covered her mouth and cried out, "Yi Jingyan." The other girl's beautiful eyes also widened and shone as if she had seen a big star. "Yi Jingyan," Ding Fugui murmured, then his expression changed and he said seriously, "That Yi Jingyan from the Yi family of planet Wuyuan?" Xing nodded repeatedly. "That's him. I heard that he's already at the late foundation establishment stage and is one of the top 10 geniuses in the joint examination of 100 schools. Several famous schools have already privately tried to rope him in, hoping that he can study there." "Ha ha, Brother Yi, long time no see. It's been half a year since we last met." As soon as Yi Jingyan and the others came up, a young man at a table on the second floor immediately greeted them with a smile. As soon as this person appeared, Qiao Shima, who was sitting next to Li Daochong, trembled. Her face turned pale and she didn't dare to look directly at him. She suddenly tightened her arms around Li Daochong. Li Daochong turned to look at Qiao Shima strangely and saw the fear in her eyes. "The Yi family of planet Wuyuan?" Li Daochong's expression changed. "Wasn't Li Xuemei's fiancée Yi Renfei from the Yi family of planet Wuyuan?" "Xiao Yinzhao," Ding Fugui said subconsciously. "You know him?" Li Daochong asked. "Brother Li, who doesn't know the eldest son of the Xiao family in Songyun City? He's a famous devil incarnate. Relying on the fact that the Xiao family is a shareholder of Hongyun Cultivation Group, he can do whatever he wants wherever he goes. In addition, he's also very talented and is in the early foundation establishment stage. Who dares to provoke him? Even the mayor of Songyun City has to retreat when he sees him. This kid is the only son of the Xiao family. Which elder in the family doesn't protect him? The Xiao family is also a cultivation family. There are several Jin Dan cultivators in the family, and the family's power is quite deep. Except for a few cultivation companies and armies, no one can do anything to him," Ding Fugui said indignantly. "On the other side, it's only been half a year." "It's not that long," Yi Jingyan said indifferently. Her attitude was obviously not as warm as Xiao Yinzhao's. The Yi family and the Xiao family were about the same in terms of strength. The Yi family was slightly weaker, but Yi Jingyan's talent was above Xiao Yinzhao's. Thus, when the two of them interacted, It was Xiao Yanzhao who was at a disadvantage. Today, he had specially invited Yi Jingyan over for a small gathering. Yi Jingyan's strength was terrifying, and Xiao Yanzhao had no choice but to curry favor with her. He still needed to rely on her to pass the 100 Schools Alliance exam so that his ranking could be higher. Today, Xuanfang Courtyard was full. When Yi Jingyan and the others arrived, there were already no seats left. Xiao Yanzhao's table already had 4 people. He did not expect Yi Jingyan to bring so many people. The table was not big to begin with, so how could 8 or 9 people sit down? If they called for the maids to accompany them, it would not be enough. Xiao Yanzhao did not want to lose face in front of Yi Jingyan, so he immediately turned to the table next to him and said coldly, "You can all scram now." However, the people at that table did not seem to hear him. They continued eating and drinking, chatting and laughing. Xiao Yanzhao's face darkened. "If you don't scram, don't blame me for being impolite. Idiot." Hiss. With this scolding, there was the sound of people sucking in cold air. Xiao Yanzhao was furious. No one in Songyun City dared to scold him like this. However, Li Daochong felt that the scolding sounded familiar. He walked around the other tables and looked over. What the hell? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.